Thank you. Thank you again. And okay, I think SBC is ready to transmit now. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for attending the Commission and assisting the Commission. We are moving on to other witnesses today, and the first witness we have this morning is Mr. Norman Weber of IDC. Mr. Weber, you're welcome. Oh, sorry, of ICS. I'm so sorry. Mr. Norman Weber of ICS, you are very welcome. Mr. Weber, would you like to take the oath? Have you a religion?
Born Catholic.
Okay. Do you want to take the Christian oath?
Yes.
Okay, could you raise your right hand? Repeat after me. I swear
I swear
that the evidence
that the evidence
I shall give before this commission
I shall give before this commission
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Mr. Weber, could you, for the record, state your name and your profession and your position at the moment?
Norman Weber. I am currently the Chief Executive Officer.
Could you speak up a little bit?
I am currently the Chief Executive Officer of Island Conservation Society, or ICS.
Can I just tell you, the microphone doesn't actually amplify the sound. I actually have to hear you, so if you could speak as loudly as you can. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Norman Weber. I am currently the Chief Executive Officer of Island Conservation Society, better known as ICS.
Thank you. How long have you held this position?
In June of this year, it will be 5 years. Sorry, it will be 6 years.
So I presume you were CEO of ICS during the time that the Assomption project was taking off,
Correct, I was.
from its inception to its present situation now.
Correct.
Thank you. Could you tell us whether you have any experience in environmental protection, or whether your role as a CEO is purely as head of an organization in an administrative role?
My position is administrative. I run the organization to ensure that it is properly managed and that the conservation objectives of the organization are met.
I can't hear you, Mr. Weber. I'm sorry.
Okay. Right. My role is administrative. Basically, I look after the organization's management, oversight over its finances and its conservation obligations, which are in fact headed by a director of conservation with a team of conservation officers who work on the islands, and also 2 of which are based at head office.
Thank you. Could you tell us when was ICS actually set up?
ICS was set up as a registered association in 2001, in April of 2001, as a registered association, taking over initially the management of Agate Island Reserve, which had been set up as a reserve in 1975.
Thank you. And could you tell us what are the objectives of the association?
Yes, the objectives are defined in the mission statement of ICS, and I will read those to you very quickly. Is conservation and restoration of island ecosystems, the sustainable development of islands, and awareness of their vulnerability and vital importance to the planet's biodiversity.
Could you tell us how ICS achieved these objectives?
It does it by way of an agreement that it has with the government of Seychelles. In 2007, an agreement was signed with the ministry at the time, the Ministry of Natural Resources, Environment and Natural Resources. And the objectives are defined as, on one of the part of the obligations of ICS is to carry out conservation and biodiversity assessments on all of the island, maintain conservation centers on the island, and carry out monitoring of the fauna and the flora. Plus, secondly, there is a possibility of science-based conservation leading to certain science-based projects, which may be subject to further publication in peer-reviewed articles. So essentially, the basic function is conservation on the islands, right, under IDC management. And secondly, for project finance-related projects that lead to conservation ultimately.
Thank you. So your organization and your staff members would be very familiar with biodiversity assessments, biodiversity management, biosecurity management, and in general, protection of the environment.
Yes, that is what we do. The principal job is to actually operate centers on the islands. So we currently have a staff of about 40 people, of which 30 of those are actually working on the islands in teams on each of the approximately 5 islands, including Argid, of course, which is under lease to ICS.
And many of those officers are what Cicero would call environment officers.
They're qualified conservationists. We have approximately 12 expatriates.
They are qualified scientists.
They are not scientists, they're conservation officers with a degree or a first degree or second degree in conservation matters, biology, ecology, evolution, that sort of thing. And they would all be positioned on the islands. I might mention that we do it because when we advertise for posts, we don't have a big uptake of Seychellois prepared to, with conservation degrees, who are prepared to work on the islands for periods of 2 years at a time. So we have a fairly regular turnover of expatriates on contract working on the islands, with the basic core at head office, which looks after the allocation of work.
Thank you.
And the objective of the annual plan is basically to develop a management plan, a conservation annual plan for each of these islands, and then implement the plan subject to review periodically.
Your remit does not extend to Assomption and to Aldabra normally, in terms of, you talked about IDC islands, but up to this time, your remit has been on other islands and not Assomption and Aldabra specifically.
No, Aldabra is excluded. Aldabra does not actually fall under...
Aldabra or the Aldabra group of islands?
The Aldabra group is Assumption, Cosmoledo, Astove, and Aldabra, of course. Yes. The 3 islands, excluding Aldabra, fall under the remit of IDC.
Okay.
So we have the structure in which we operate is there are in fact an NGO set up for each of the islands called a foundation. Now, these foundations have their own board of trustees, and they run and they approve the program.
Are they different trustees for each island?
Yes.
Okay.
Different board of trustees for which we have to make annual returns and accounts and all that sort of thing. And then ICS manages those NGOs. So you have a situation of one NGO managing an NGO for each island.
Okay. And is there an overlap in the staff of those trustees? Is there an overlap in their remit over the different islands?
The association, the statute of incorporations for each of these NGOs require that there be a representative of IDC, a representative of ICS, and a representative of the developer on the island.
Okay.
And they form the board of trustees that manages the conservation
so
work on the island.
That's the way the work is carried out. I have a question for you, because I don't know whether you've been listening to the testimony over the past few days.
Some of it.
There has been an allegation of conflicts of interest that arise, given that IDC have a member on the ICS board. Okay? And I wanted to tease this out a little bit with you. IDC's main concern is the development of the outer islands, whereas ICS's objective, as you've described, is conservation. All right? Do you see a conflict between development and conservation? And if you do, how is that managed?
I think there is a potential conflict, for sure, in the sense that the conservation work is carried out under an agreement between IDC, ICS, and the government, where the government basically says to IDC, you will look after conservation issues on the island. Now, IDC then delegates that function to ICS, which is a private NGO. It is not a government department. The structure of having foundations which receives conservation levies from each of the developers on the island, which is paid to the foundation. That contribution is then utilized to run the conservation center and paying a management fee to ICS, the main body of ICS. So there is a potential for conflict, and that conflict, as far as possible, must be resolved at the board of trustees level of the foundation.
Of each foundation.
Of each foundation.
But the foundation is guided by ICS, by board resolutions made by ICS.
No, the foundation is guided by their own resolution made by the board of that foundation.
So if ICS was to state to the board that we are going to carry out a biodiversity assessment, they would have to implement it.
Well, it's required under the agreement with government that we have to do biodiversity assessments for all the island on an ongoing basis. So it's understood by the board that it is part of our ongoing obligations.
Yes, I understand that. But I'm saying the manner or the methodology of the assessment, can be dictated by the ICS Board of Trustees.
Well, because ICS manages those foundations, the standard monitoring biodiversity assessment is done accordance with best practices for biodiversity management. Now, if there are special projects, for example, there may be a need to do an assessment of, let us say, the mangroves dying in Cosmoledo, right? Now, those kind of special projects, in addition to the ongoing conservation work, those will be subject to approval by the board of the foundations.
Okay. So can I ask you now at this stage, how is it that ICS at some point in time became involved in the Assomption development?
The ICS was asked by IDC whether they would be interested to carry out EIA.
Let me just stop you there. So you were asked by IDC, but not by the Assets Group or Ocean Breeze, the developers themselves?
No.
You were asked by IDC?
Yeah.
And they were representing the developers?
They were on the board of IDC. So,
I know that, but they did not come to you as a board member to ask you to carry out this task. They came as IDC to ask you to carry out the task.
No, asked whether ICS would be interested to do
Yes.
this job. And the response was to go back to the board and ask the board whether or not...
No, that's not my question. Did IDC, in its capacity as a board member of ICS, ask ICS to carry out the assessment, or did IDC separately, as an organization, wearing just the pure hat of IDC, but representing the developers, ask you to carry out the assessment?
Well, the question was done outside of the board.
That's my question.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I assume, therefore, that it was a question that was posed by IDC directly to us.
So there was formal correspondence to that effect?
There was an exchange of mails.
Exchange of mail, which you will be passing on to the commission.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you remember the date of the mail?
Yes, I have round about June of 2023. But it was not in respect of the company. It was in respect of development on the map.
Yes. So what we understand was that two assessments being done on the after back, and there was one for Assumption. So initially you were only contacted about the one at Morbach. So that one was carried out first, was it? So how were you then engaged for the Assumption project?
The process, because the law prescribes the process of registering.
Yeah,
Right.
I know that, but IDC asked you to carry out the assessment for Assumption.
Yes. Asked us whether we'd be interested to carry out an EIA for Grand Bab Silhouette and any other developments on the island.
Yes, I'm not focusing on Morbach. I'm speaking about Assumption.
Yes.
Okay. Did Glenny Savi ask ICS would they be interested in carrying out an assessment
Correct.
on the SIA?
And yes, yeah, in Isaiah, yes.
Yes. And on that basis, you were granted by IDC the assessment project.
No, we had to apply for registration first, and then
That you were going to get this. There's no point applying to carry out an assessment unless you had been told at Mr. Savi that that would be granted to you.
no, we're not told that. We're told that we needed to apply, and that we would, of course, need to sign a contract with the developers
Yes.
for this
Yes.
to be appointed as a consultant.
Is there anybody else in Seychelles who carries out environmental and social impact assessments apart
Yes.
from ICS?
Yes, there are about 3, I think.
Who?
One of them is, I think, Mr. Charlotte, Ian Charlotte, who has a company who does it. The other person is somebody known as Nim.
LIM.
Nim.
NIM.
Yes, he's
Spell?
a registered EIA consultant.
NEEM?
I think NEEM, yes.
Okay. Okay.
And there are others, international consultants, who from time to time are appointed.
Okay. Are you aware if a tender process was engaged with for
No.
the? No.
No,
So you don't know whether there were any competitors for this assessment,
no.
but you were asked then to register with the Environment Department
Yes.
to be able to carry out this assessment. What month was that?
The application was made on the 5th of July, 2023.
How long did it take before you were granted approval of registration?
Approval was granted in October, the 13th of October.
When did you sign the agreement with IDC?
We didn't sign an agreement with IDC. We signed the agreement with the developers, and that was done in 29th of January, 2024.
So this is why I asked you the questions before. How did IDC approach you? Did they approach you as IDC, who always partners with you for conservation on the islands, or were they an agent for the developer? You understand why I asked you that question?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because the
but
developer
point
did not. The developer never came to you directly to ask
No,
you, would you carry out the assessment?
No, but we did have a meeting with the developer.
At what stage?
Also in October.
Also in October, after you had been registered.
Yes.
Okay. And what was that meeting about?
Well, to discuss the terms of the appointment.
And was Greg Burke present at that meeting?
Yes.
And could you tell us who Greg Burke is?
Greg Berg is a director of conservation
Okay.
and conservation at ICS. So he's a director. So he directs the work of all the conservation centers. He's assisted by a senior conservation officer at head office, Emma Mederic.
Yeah. So he would normally be the person contacted to head any of the assessments on any of the islands.
Correct. In the application form that we made, the application that we made to the ministry, we have to specify the expertise that we have to be able to do the work.
Thank you.
So, in fact, the work was granted on the basis that Greg Burke would be one carrying out the EIA assessments.
Is that the first EIA that Greg Burke has carried out?
No, he's carried out several others, but not with ICS.
Not with ICS.
Yes.
So personally, he has done it.
Well,
In
he's done it
Seychelles?
in Seychelles, outside of Seychelles as well.
Okay.
In fact, his CV was submitted to the ministry
Okay.
for approval.
Okay. Do you know where else he has carried out EIAs?
Yes, I understood that he did part of the EIAs with involving the SIA on the Assomption project, the X-Reef Hotel project.
I'm just trying to establish if he has done assessments before on the outer islands.
I'm not sure.
Okay. We can ask him that when he comes.
Yes.
It's not a problem. In terms of the funding of ICS, how are you funded?
ICS, the foundations are funded by conservation levies from the developers to the foundation itself. And that money belongs to the foundations. It doesn't belong to ICS. ICS then paid a management fee to manage those foundations. Currently, it comes from each of the foundations. and also comes from trust in the UK that pays funding to ICS to manage ARID.
Do you receive any funding from the government,
No.
from any parastatals, including IDC?
There is indirect funding from IDC through the provision of flights to the island, accommodation for the conservation officer working on the islands, and meals. Although the meals may sometimes be from the hotel itself.
Okay, thank you. In the meeting that was held on the 30th of October with the developers that you attended together with Mr. Greg Burke, was Mr. Glennie Savvy present at that meeting?
Yes.
Okay. What was the purport of that meeting?
Well, to assess whether or not we had the competence to do the work and to discuss the scope of the process. So we had to present the process of how the AIA is done.
Was there any time limit given for the assessment?
No, but there was some pressure from the developers to try and do it as quickly as possible.
Did they ask ICS to expedite the assessment?
It has always been pressure from them to expedite the assessment.
Did they give you a duration for your assessment? Did they tell you we need this, turnover 2 months, 3 months?
Well, they were putting pressure, saying it should be done as quickly as possible. There was no time frame discussed. We were not able to confirm a time frame because we said it depends on the process. As you know, the process is a complicated process that requires time, it requires consultation. So we did not commit to time. We said we will follow the process.
Okay. Was there any discussion about the flora and the fauna of Assomption at the time of these discussions?
No.
So the developers weren't aware that there were no baseline studies as far as the fauna was concerned and that there was a dated flora assessment?
Well, they wouldn't have known all of that unless they were told by somebody, and we didn't tell them anything because we didn't know that there was, in fact, no baseline study being done.
So this is what we're trying to get at, we're trying to tease out. Was it a developer under the impression that a biodiversity assessment could be done by somebody just visiting the island and writing a report? Was that their impression?
I think so.
Okay.
I think the impression by them is that it's just a formality to be followed.
Okay. When the scoping exercise took place, were the developers present at that?
The scoping? No. The scoping starts with the whole process of public meetings. They were at the public meetings.
That's what I'm asking.
They had to attend the public meeting. It's
They were
required by
present.
law. Yes. And of course, it was a public meeting that was held in Roche-Caïman. In fact, there were 3 public meetings held. One with stakeholders initially, one with special requirement to deal with the requirements of Cosmoledo and Aldabra in the area defined under the MNSP. And the third one was done with the general public, and that was under Roche-Caïman.
So for that scoping exercise, they made a presentation of the concept of the project.
Correct.
And they discussed the size of the hotel development.
Correct.
They had a rough footprint of what that would occupy on the island.
Well, they had a architectural presentation, right, showing the layout, showing some artist's impression of what it would look like.
At that meeting, was the runway discussed as well? The fact the runway had already been extended?
There were some questions asked about the runway, but there was, I think you know that there were in fact 2 EIAs that were done.
Could you talk to us about that?
Well, the first EIA was actually what is called an EIA under Class 2 assessment. Now, basically, IDC had applied to extend the runway, right? That was to the Planning Authority. The Planning Authority required an EIA Class 2 to be done. We didn't do the EIA Class 2. That was done by the Ministry. So the Ministry approved the extension of the runway under a Class 2 assessment and approved IDC to go ahead. We were involved in the
That
class.
was done previous to them coming
Previous.
to you for the next
Correct.
assessment.
Right. That was quite a few months before the actual planning application was made.
So you were
for-
not involved at all in the extension of the runway?
Oh, no, no,
Okay.
we're not involved.
Thank you.
That was done, that work started, and then when we were told that an application had been made by the developers to do the project, the main project, at that point, the EIA Class 1 was required.
Okay. Could you, for the record, could you explain the difference between a Class 1 EIA and a Class 2 EIA?
Well, the Class 1 is very detailed. It requires a presentation of the whole project from beginning to end, and all of the elements that are required to implement the project, all of the environmental impacts that it would cause, including social impacts as well, and of course, whether we had any views on mitigations that could be required so that we have shall we call a mitigation matrix, which is standard in EIA assessments, whereby you look at each item that is of concern and have an opinion regarding what mitigation can be carried out, what is the effect after mitigation, what is the effect before mitigation.
To reduce the impact on the environment.
To reduce the impact, right? So it is one of the major documents that one would look at after the EIA is completed.
And a Class 2?
The Class 2 is normally carried out by sort of a watered-down version.
Okay.
In fact, the actual EIA document, Class 2, I think is about 2 pages long. The Class 1 assessment is 400 pages long, including attachments.
So would you know the reason?
As I can see, the impact would be considerable as well.
Well, the ministry did not actually
Well, the
tell us that they
ministry
had
did
actually
not
carried out the
tell us
class with
that they had
themselves. And we inquired about it. We then asked at the time, we asked for the EIA assessment that had been done by the ministry. That's how we found out it was a 2-page document outlining certain requirements that had to be done. But we don't know why.
We
it was a
don't know
class
why.
two.
Was that a problem that had
was
to
that
be
a
resolved
problem that had
under
to
the
be
second
resolved
environmental impact by your organization? It caused certain difficulties.
Well, once the ministry has
Well,
granted
once
EIA
the
class
ministry has
2,
granted
and it is
EIA
then
Class
conveyed
2,
back
and
to
it
the
is then
planning
conveyed back to the planning authority, and the planning authority issues planning permission for the extension of the runway, we have no involvement.
And that's what I'm asking you. So when you were asked to carry out the environmental and social impact assessment on Assomption, you were landed with an extended runway which had already impacted on the environment.
Correct.
So
In
for
fact,
example,
when we started the work, the runway was already being extended, in the process of being extended.
and no mitigation factors had been implemented in terms of the fauna or the flora on Assomption at that stage.
Well, the ministry's response to that when we asked them was that they were not unable to visit the island during the construction phase, and therefore they were not sure whether or not their recommendations had been followed or not.
So it begs the question of why did they grant it if they did not visit it and supervise it?
Correct.
So our own observations were that land tortoises, are not able to cross safely a very large and extended runway.
Well, the runway was, I think, 1.4 kilometers. We extended to 2 kilometers, right? Leaving a space of approximately 200 meters on both sides of the runway. But actually, it impedes directly the crossing of the runway directly. But in any case, there would have been some mitigation required to prevent the tortoises being a threat to aviation.
Yes,
right?
I asked the question because I think in the ICS environmental impact assessment, they talk about underpasses for the land tortoises.
Well, we suggested one possible solution could be underpasses, but the second solution would be basically the fencing of the perimeter of the runway, leaving space on both sides. Right? But the tortoises are all over the island. Right?
Yes, but effectively, if you were to build the fencing, then you are interfering with the fauna, who before that could roam from one side of the island to the other, because
Correct.
the runway as it is now bisects the island into two.
Yes.
Correct, yeah. So at the scoping report, at the scoping meeting with the public, were there many questions from the community about the magnitude of the project and its impact?
Well, at the stage of the public meetings, right, all attendees have to record their presence.
Yes.
So we take attendance of that. Then they're entitled to ask questions, some of which can be verbal, but most of it have to be written down questions, right? So all this is recorded. In fact, it is recorded, and the record of the deliberations are then given by the ministry to the ministry for them to transcribe the requirements that have been raised, the points or concerns, whatever it is. This then summarizes and back to us, right? And now we have to address those concerns, right? And include those in the scoping. Now, that forms part of the scoping exercise.
Okay. So that meeting was held, as you say, on the 29th of January?
The scoping, the
Yeah.
public meeting?
No.
No, I think the meeting I'm referring to.
The meeting at Roshkaima.
Oh yes, I don't have a date. I think it was around about March
Of 2024.
24. If Greg comes in later on, he'll probably
Yeah.
confirm the exact date of the
So
scoping
that was the
meeting.
first meeting, and you said there were subsequent meetings.
No, there were stakeholders meetings
Okay.
with government departments or stakeholders who had any concerns.
Was there not another meeting, though? Because I think you were requested to do another public meeting at some stage? Or am I wrong in assuming that?
No, there was one public meeting.
Okay.
There was one meeting of stakeholders and a second meeting only with the MSSP.
And when you said it was a meeting with the stakeholders, could you perhaps tell us who these stakeholders would have been?
Basically government departments.
Different
tourism,
different arms.
environment themselves, fire, health, that sort of.
Okay. No
Category.
NGOs.
SIF is not an NGO, but
Yes.
SIF was also invited to those meetings.
And they were present.
They were present.
Were concerns raised
There were concerns raised by SIF.
by everyone?
Yes, concerns were raised as to one of the concerns, for example, was that the project needs to be downscaled, was conservation concerns. There was the concern about the possible effect on Aldabra. But that concern did not feature in a big way, as it should have in our view. But there were concerns about, one of the stakeholders was heritage people who want to know how many tombs were on Aldabra. In fact, we had all that information in the scoping reports.
You
to
had
be
all
able-
the information in the scoping report.
Well, we had to find it because they didn't know very much about the islands.
Yeah. Yeah. And subsequently, there was another meeting. After that stakeholders meeting, there was a third meeting.
With the public meeting. So the first meeting was the stakeholders meeting. Secondly, a special meeting for MSSP, and then the third
Who
one
is
was the public
MSSP?
Maritime Spatial Plan, who handle all the zone 2 allocations
So
for the Maritime Spatial
Who
Plan.
from the Maritime Spatial Planning Agency did you meet?
Well, attended by Helena Sims, right? There's also the coordinator based in the United States who came on by Zoom transmission.
Yeah.
And there was also John Neville.
John
Neville,
Neville.
yeah,
Okay.
who was actually the MSP specialist at the ministry.
Okay.
He was also there.
Was the three meetings, were they all attended by Mr. Glennie Savvy?
Not the MSP meetings and not the stakeholders meeting, but the public meetings, yes.
He attended. There were accusations by different stakeholders that there was a conflict of interest in Mr. Savvy being on the board of ICS and the ICS being granted the job of doing the assessment. How do you respond to that?
I think there was a potential for conflict.
In fact, in writing the report and when the scoping report was sent to the ministry responded to us, giving us the terms of reference. The terms will ask us to express our views and respond to the potential conflict of interest. Right. We responded to that in
the report, you
EIA.
responded to that by saying it was going to be transparent. Do you think that's sufficient?
Well, in the sense of not having to refer to the developer.
I don't understand.
By transparency, you mean that did we do it independently of the developer?
Yes, for
Yes.
example, and where the public at all times able to scrutinize the process, so that it was indeed transparent.
Well, based on the receipt of the terms of the terms of reference, we then carry out the EIA according to the terms of reference. I think the structure is very simple. Whilst as a consultant to the developer, we are paid by the developer as any other consultant is paid, we actually report to the ministry. So the structure is very clear. We are paid by the developer, but we report to the ministry under the terms of reference.
Yeah.
So we then actually carry out the work in accordance with those terms of reference.
In terms of professionalism and in terms of accountability, it doesn't matter who pays you if you know that the person that you are reporting to is the person who requires an independent report, regardless
Correct.
of where the funding is coming from.
Yes.
It would be like any expert coming to court. Their duty is to the court. It's not to the person who's paid them. So the expert that you're taking for the EIA, their expertise, which is reflected in the report, is sent to the government, who ultimately has complete responsibility for safeguarding the islands. Would I be correct?
Correct.
Okay. Was there any interference or was there any pressure put by Mr. Savi in this process?
Not by Mr. Savi.
By whom?
By the developers, constantly basically refusing to accept or delaying to accept that these things cannot be done.
Yes.
For
But
example,
Mr. Savi was representing the developers. This is my question. He was the agent for the developers. Sometimes he wasn't personally. Sometimes other employees of IDC would have been represented.
yeah, the developers communicate with us directly.
The developers were not at the meetings except for the first
for
one.
meeting, but during the process,
During the process,
they would ask us for progress, basically what's happening, and then obviously as and when we would respond to those things, they would start arguing about those things.
you familiar with a Mr. Butt, B-U-T-T?
Abid Butt?
Yes.
Yes.
Was he the person representing?
No, the structure of the organization that we work with, we signed a contract with an organization called IDCC,
Yes.
right? Now, IDC are the consultants to the owners of the project. Abid Butt does not work for IDCC. Abid Butt works for Asset.
Well, he doesn't anymore anyway. He's been let go. So
Okay,
that's
well,
that's why
at
I'm
the
asking you.
time,
Yeah.
but he did not communicate with us. He was always IDCC who would write to us saying
So
what's
who
happening.
who from IDCC was communicating to you?
Principally somebody called Jad Rizk,
Yeah.
Rizk, R-I-Z-K.
Okay. Do you have written communication from him?
Oh, yes. A lot of it by emails and by
Could you please make this available to the
Yes.
Commission? Thank you. So the scoping report was completed,
yes,
and there were several matters raised in the scoping report.
yes.
Could you highlight the main matters raised in the scoping report?
I don't have the scoping report with me, unfortunately, but it's a long report.
Okay.
Actually, maybe I do. What I did not have, sorry, is the actual EIA report.
That's
which-
okay. We have that. Yeah.
I can let you have this document.
Yes.
actually.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, we have, this is scoping report feedback. right?
feedback
Given to us by the ministry. So this is a
Yeah.
feedback on the scoping report. At the same time, they would have attached the terms
Ministry
of
of
reference.
Environment,
Ministry of Environment.
because they were tasked then with preparing the TOR, the TOR.
Yes, yes. So basically, you want me to read it out to you?
Yes, please.
Okay, number one, further consultation is required with the Immigration Department, Seychelles Revenue Commission, and the Seychelles National Institute of Culture and Heritage. Please ensure these contexts are included in the IA report. Two, with regard to key components, utilities are provided by Island Development Company. Details should be provided in the EIA. They should include the potential impacts of providing these utilities and alternative methods of providing utilities. Three, the department would like to clarify that although the outline application submitted to the Seychelles Planning Authority was approved, no environmental authorization was issued for this application. And to date,
No environmental?
The department would like to clarify, although the outline application submitted to the Seychelles Planning Authority, right, was approved, no environment authorization was issued for this application. It's just basically stating the facts. And to date, no environmental authorization has been issued for the proposed development. The department acknowledges the findings of the scoping report, which show that Assomption has many important ecological habitats and species. The department supports the recommendations set out in the scoping report, and therefore, the developer should scale down the development number of villas and restaurants. Furthermore, the department agrees with the necessity to carry out additional surveys of the biodiversity on the island and to collect at least 1 year of monitoring data prior to construction. Please provide a timeline for the proposed monitoring. Right? The department is currently not in favor of introducing horses to the island and agrees with the potential risks as stated in the scoping report. 7, the developer is advised to scale down his proposal along the West Beach, which is an important nesting site for green turtles, and to limit development along this beach to ensure that a significant portion of the main beach remains undeveloped and protected. This will ensure that there is undisturbed areas for nesting of sea turtles. 8, the developer should use only the existing jetty and make any necessary improvements to it as is necessary. 9, following the findings of surveys carried out and covered in the scoping report, a minimum setback of 40 meters from the high water mark shall apply, and to all proposals along the beach coastal front. 10, furthermore, the developer should consider further setbacks from the high water mark for the other buildings along the West Beach, which is an important nesting site for sea turtles. 11, no dune activities will be permitted to ensure that the wellness center is set back sufficiently from the dunes to prevent any impact on habitats there, right? And to minimize erosion, deterioration of the sand dunes. 12, the department is strongly in favor of the recommendation to minimize the development footprint and for Assumption to be developed as an eco-destination. The developer is advised to consider an eco-resort as an alternative to the current proposed development, taking into consideration the recommendation made by the IA consultant. And
That feedback was dated when, Mr. Weber?
this letter came to us on the 15th of April, 2024. And attached to it were, therefore, the Environment Department hereby submits the terms of reference for the environmental assessment study, see attached.
Yeah,
And here we have
the terms of reference
the terms of reference.
for the EISIA.
Right. So the scoping report highlights concerns of everybody,
Yeah.
while the ministry summarizes that and says, these are the concerns, make sure you do it in your EIA assessment.
In our own examinations, we've looked at the scoping report, we've looked at the feedback, and then we've looked at the eventual ESIA, and there are discrepancies. One of those, for example, you just mentioned yourself, the one-year monitoring, the fact that there were no baseline studies on especially on the fauna, the fact that there was no marine spatial planning done or any probes done, and then the ESIA was carried out and completed and the report done.
Yes.
All right? And I am asking you now whether the ICS felt pressurized to produce this report and perhaps to the detriment of some of the matters that were raised that had to be assessed, but that were glossed over or resulted in an ESIA which looks a little bit incomplete, if I may say so.
There was pressure from the developers to finish off the ESIA. We had long arguments with developers because they didn't agree to some of the terms of that.
So when they got that feedback report, it was communicated to them.
Oh, yes.
And what was their response?
Response, they felt some of it was undoable. For example, the biodiversity assessment over one period of 1 year, right?
And
w-
did the ICS capitulate?
No, we said it had to be done. It had to be done, but it could be done concurrently.
Why
The
did you say that? How could it be done concurrently?
Because,
Is that best international practice?
well, the international practice in the sense is there is no template for an assessment to be done.
Well, best international practice is the template, if I may say so.
But there is nowhere where there says best international practice. The EIA
No,
is
there are
done in
plenty of
accordance.
research papers on what type of studies and assessment should be carried out on a sensitive environment, Mr. Weber.
But not in connection with the proximity of Assumption to Alhambra.
Well, even more so. Even more so if it's been highlighted in other environments which are not as sensitive as Assomption, then my question to you is much more attention should have been brought to the biodiversity of Assomption and the protection of the biodiversity of Assomption, rather than a report produced very fast because of the pressure from the developers.
Yeah, the report was produced over a period of about 8 months. So
Very short. There was no 1 year monitoring. There was no seasonal assessment of how the seasons affect the island,
Correct.
and how the development would affect further the island.
yeah, but we had suggested to the ministry that we accepted a suggestion that it could be extended over. It had to be extended for a period over 2 seasons, and we had actually contacted a subcontractor because who to carry out this. We had actually done 3 actual contractors that were involved in this project. In addition to ICS, there was the vegetation assessment that was done by Dr. Santerre,
Yes.
a comprehensive report. There was a second one, ornithological report, done by Rob Lucking, right? And there was also a biodiversity, management plan, biosecurity management plan done by a New Zealander
Mr.
at the
Coulson.
at the recommendation of SIF. So those 2 reports were done, right? And we were contracting with Mr. Santerre to carry out a biodiversity assessment plan over a period of a year. But that's not part of the EIA. That's part of the work after the EIA. Now, we had in fact contacted them, but we said to the developer, you have to pay for this because this is not part of the EIA work that you do to us. The developers refused to pay for it.
So they had paid you $500,000 for the ESIA, had they?
$500,000? I know. You want
Well, we were
That
told
figure?
yesterday that's what it was, so I'm asking you.
$500,000? No, the actual,
Oh, sorry, I've been corrected. I think that was the quote you gave them for the biodiversity study. Is that right?
the biodiversity study, no, we didn't quote them for biodiversity study because they were not prepared to enter into a biodiversity assessment with Bruno
We
Santerre.
understand that you quoted 500,000, and then eventually they had to go to SIF, who has quoted them. You quoted them $500,000, and that they had to go to SIF, and the quote from there was more than $5 million.
Well, what we had quoted them for 3 different things following the EIA, we said to them that you had to do, you had to employ 3 people to do the biodiversity assessment. And those people were concerned different areas of specialization, right? So we'd asked them to quote us, we told them that the estimated cost for the biodiversity assessment of Assumption was $42,000.
Was? Only
$42,000. Then we told them that they had to, and that would be a combination of 3 consultants. I will give you the details now. Vegetation specialist, 10,500. Entomologist, 10,500. And ecology specialist, 21,000. That was the total for biodiversity assessment. But that was a figure that would be done over by people, but not continually over. It would be
And
done over seasons.
did you give them an indication of the duration of those studies?
Oh yes, you would have to done not over a full year, but done over seasons.
Two
So-
seasons at least.
2 seasons to see the effect of the rain and of the rain during the period. We also gave them an assessment because they had undertaken to do a rat eradication.
That's right.
Now we gave them an estimate for a feasibility study because we had decided that you do not know the content of the expense of an actual eradication, and we provided what would constitute a feasibility of whether the eradication is going to be possible. And the suggestion for a feasibility study was $30,000. And then monitoring of biosecurity costs. So the total cost to them of biodiversity assessment, feasibility study for cats, rice, and mouse eradication, biosecurity monitoring costs, $85,000. Now that does not include the actual eradication. This is a different cup of tea altogether. But that's expensive normally. It would be about. It would run into $300,000 to $300,000 at least.
Yeah,
if not
easily. They never accepted this.
No,
quote.
basically, once we were removed after the completion of the EIA, we have not been in touch with them, or they haven't been in touch with us.
But you were under the impression that you would be carrying out, once you gave them the quotes, you were under the impression that that would be negotiated and you would be the organization tasked with those different assessments that you have just described to us.
Basically, the objective was to establish a center on and we had agreed that we would oversee the implementation of the requirements, oversee the biodiversity assessment. We would not be doing it ourselves. Our job is to carry on ongoing monitoring work, including biodiversity assessments.
Mm-hmm.
But for this particular one, we have said we would do it, but we would ensure somebody else does it. So we'd oversight during the construction process.
At what point did you, I suppose I can ask that of Mr. Burke himself, but at what point did you, for me it's a capitulation, to accept that there would be a concurrent biodiversity assessment with the construction of the hotel?
When we discussed it with them, they said they would undertake to do it at the same time of the construction.
And you were
Process.
satisfied with that?
Well, we discussed it at the head office, and Greg was of the opinion that it could be done, provided it was properly supervised by us. So the condition of it was that we would supervise the implementation of biosecurity assessment by third parties, right? And they would then report to us over the biodiversity assessment.
Okay, well, I'll ask him how he finds it possible to do that. So I suppose that's not your question. I'm finishing up with you, Mr. Weber. If you're patient with me, could you tell us? Yeah. What do you think? I just want to know your perception of your relationship with the developer. Was it only for the environmental impact assessment, or did you see it as including all the different aspects of the environment?
Well, it was as a consultant for carrying out the EIA.
But when you engage at initial stages, your perception was that you would be the one who would be really looking after the environment on Assomption.
Oh yeah, that was understood always because we had already established a foundation
Yeah.
for Assumption, but it was not manned because we had no funding for it.
Yeah.
Right.
They are supposed to fund that.
Well, part of the agreement, you see, if they built a development on the island, right, under the foundation would then receive conservation levies from that development,
As is done on the other islands.
as is done on the other island, because we already had one on our stove. We already have one on our stove, and we're covering Cosmoledo because we did several work for the government in the bird censuses that we did on Cosmoledo under the Astove foundation.
So you had set up a foundation for Assomption. You had already earmarked the people who would be
Yes.
going to carry out the work.
Yeah.
You had done a projection of the cost, and that had been communicated
Yes.
to the developers?
Well, we've done more than that. Not only had we established already, many years ago, not recently, many years ago, we had established the foundations for all the islands, right? Some of them were dormant because there was no funding for it. In the particular case of the Assumption, we had a foundation for Assumption and Astu of Cosmoledo. We had a foundation. Then we had a separate standalone foundation for Assumption. Now, when the development started, we said the best option would be to combine that foundation into one. So we created a foundation which we named the Aldabra Group Foundation,
Okay.
even if you did not include Aldabra.
Okay. Mr. Weber, given the difficulties that you've described in both the matters that were highlighted both in the scoping report and in the SIA, were you surprised that the Ministry of Environment gave the notice of acceptance?
Surprised in the sense of
That many of the matters that had been outlined in the SIA had not been implemented or had not been put in place for the construction to start, and yet the notice of acceptance was made.
yeah, as far as we were concerned, the moment we received the notice of acceptance, our job was done, right? So, but coincidentally after that, we were no longer interested, we were no longer invited to participate. We did, however, draw to the Ministry's attention that there were breaches taking place. In some cases...
Breaches in terms of the SIA.
Of the SIA. For example, we did in fact communicate a photograph of a tortoise that had been injured. We originated that photograph and sent it to the ministry. We also said to the ministry that it appears that no work has been done whatsoever on the appointment
Of an environmental officer.
Of an environmental officer. No work has been done on the appointment of biosecurity diversity assessment, biodiversity assessments. And we informed the ministry, and the ministry basically didn't respond. There was one case where we had a meeting with the ministry at the time that there was we were informed through a TV that there was going to be a committee that was going to look after, and memorandum was going to be written between SIF, the ministry, and the developers, and we were not mentioned at all. We were completely excluded. And then we actually wrote a letter to the president, saying to the president that we've been excluded from the process. The copies of the letter are attached here, saying that we have these concerns. There was no response to the letter. We wrote a second letter, and of course there was no
response either
to those letters. And then at the time, Mr. Bernard Georges, who happened to be the chairman of the Farquhar Foundation, right, was invited to join the Aldabra Group Foundation, right, as a trustee on the Aldabra Foundation, which he declined to do. So, and afterwards, there was no further input from us, or no further input required from us. And I'm talking end of February, March of 2025.
25.
We have not been in any way connected to the project since March of 2025.
You were not invited to a meeting at State House concerning Assomption.
The
meeting
in which year? Which month? Which year?
In 2025. The meeting would have taken place around June of 2025 to lift the first stop notice.
No.
You were aware of the stop notice?
We were aware of stop notice. In fact, we had a meeting with Environment where the Environment was deciding whether or not to issue the stop notice or to instruct the planning authority to issue the stop notice.
Yeah, the prohibition notice that they... The prohibition
well, there are two,
as
you notice. One is a stop notice, and that is issued by the planning authority.
Exactly.
The second one is a prohibition notice issued by the Environment.
Correct.
So the first one, right, we had a meeting about it, and they said what were our recommendations. And our recommendation is to stop the project. And immediately after that meeting, they issued the stop notice. But, they instructed the planning authority to issue so that was issued as a stop notice. But then understanding was lifted.
4 days later, it was lifted,
later.
And from what we've been able to glean from the documents, the breaches that had triggered the stop notice had not been remedied.
But it was lifted.
It was lifted.
Yeah.
You were not aware of that. You were not invited to any of those meetings that prompted the lifting of the
No.
notice. You were not invited to any meetings concerning the second stop notice that was issued in November
No.
2025.
That was the recent one. That's a
Yes.
prohibition order.
Yes.
Yeah. No.
You did not
No.
contribute any communication
No.
to the ministry over that one.
We did issue a press release after the prohibition order to basically say that we supported the prohibition
You
order.
supported it.
Yes.
Are you surprised that the executive, and by the executive I mean the president, and also the chair of SIF has been involved in this development?
No, because I assume that there is a relationship that of that DABRA that dictates this kind of arrangement. One, you have the president as patron. We have Mr. Bernard Georges, and we have also somebody else called Mr. Romano Lawrence, who also sits on the board of ICS and also sits on our board. So on our board, we had the main board. So at the AGM carried out in June or July of 2025
Of the ICS.
of the ICS board, Mr. George did not.
Mr. George is on the ICS board as well?
Yes,
He's on SIF, he's on ICS.
yes,
He was the leader of government business.
yes.
He was a close friend of the president, and he was involved in conservation and in terms of the hotel development.
Yeah, but Mr. George has been on the board from before the Assumption.
Yes, but there was no hotel development then.
Yeah, yeah.
So he was at all those meetings.
He was at the ICS board meetings, yes.
Okay, and what was the purport of that meeting?
For the EIA. Well, we had to go to the board to get EIA approval to do the EIA. Right now, he's a member of the board.
Did you not see a conflict there?
I am not a board member. I am a
Okay.
CEO.
Are all these board members paid, to your knowledge?
No,
Nobody's paid.
nobody's paid.
They paid in trips to the outer islands, I suppose. They get trips to the outer island.
Well, there has only been in my 6 years that I've been with the organization, I know of one trip of the Farquhar Foundation where board members attended. But no other board members, been no group meetings at any of these
Yeah.
meetings.
See, all these persons that you mentioned, the president who might be patron, Mr. Georges who is a lawyer, none of these people are conservationists, and yet they seem to be the driving force behind decisions that are made.
But look, there are other people who are not conservationists as well, who are also on the board.
No, you, Mr. Weber, for example, you have a team of scientists working for you, all right?
Yes.
And I would assume at least that some scientists would be attending those meetings when very important decisions are made to allow a development to continue, which has an impact on the environment, and not just people who are either politicians or who are patrons without a scientific background.
But at all of the ICS meetings itself, there are 3 meetings held a year, plus the AGM. At all the meetings of ICS, the conservation staff attend.
Yes.
Right. On the board meetings of the foundations, right, the conservation officer, and there are 3 of these meetings a year, the field officers, the conservationists
Are
also attend this
present.
meeting, are present.
Yeah. My criticism is not directed at ICS or at you. I'm asking you for your opinion in view of the way you run the ICS. Why persons like a patron, like Mr. Georges, who is, has a very big personality in SIF, but also in the government, why would he be involved in decision making where conservation is discussed and no other scientists are present?
Are you asking whether he should be or whether?
I'm asking you
why?
whether that is wise.
I don't know. I'm not a board member. I don't deal with the appointment of directors. Basically, when I arrived as an employee of ICS, and I'm a paid employee of ICS, the structure was already there.
No, I'm asking you to volunteer an opinion, whether it is wise to have people who have no knowledge of science, of conservation, to make decisions about matters that impact on conservation in the absence of scientific personnel being present.
Let us say it is it is sometimes beneficial,
Okay.
right? Sometimes it is not when there is a potential for conflict. I would say that having a board entirely of scientists, right, doesn't always achieve the objectives if their objective is the management of conservation, right? Because conservation managed at a field level is different as to a policy on conservation. And of course, a lot of people participate, right, in the process. For example, because ICS has to derive management plans. Now, these are basically long-term management plans. Now, under various programs of government, for example, under the Global Environment Fund 5, and more recently the GF7, right, there are provisions for carrying out certain types of management plans, right, funded by external organizations. So we produce the management plans. The management concerns not only the conservation plan, concerns the whole management structure, finance is included, and the relationship with the government. For example, ICS does work for government as well, right? For example, it did. There was a project called the Blue Carbon Assessment of seagrass in some of the islands. That was funded by an organization called Pew, at York University, and there was a whole Ministry of Involvement.
I understand that, but that's not my question. I think over the last few days, what has come to our attention is that there's a very incestuous, or well, as we know, incest is very unhealthy, but it seems to be the same personnel that keep coming up in all of the decision-making process. And I'm not talking about the wonderful scientists who work as conservationists to protect the environment of Seychelles. It's the same board members on all the relevant authorities that we have come across. So even government agencies, we have the same people appearing from government agencies, from arms of government, on the ICS board, on the IDC board, on the SIF board. There's quite a bit of overlap in the personnel.
Well, let me read you the members of the board.
The present one or the old ones?
The ones who were present at the time of making a decision and who are largely the same members. So we have Adrian Skerritt as the chairman.
I can't hear you, sorry.
Adrian Skerritt.
Yes.
We have Glennie Savi as the vice chairman. We have Jura Okamura, Dr. Okamura.
He's a scientist.
Yes. We have Edwin Palmer, right? We have Elena Sims.
Also a scientist.
Yes, we have Pat Lablache, right? We have Johanna Prosper at the time, Johanna Prosper. We have Bernard Georges, and we have Pat Mathiot, right? Since then, there was the attendance at the meeting of August 2023, right? Then subsequently, in the November AGM, Johanna Prosper did not make herself available for election. I was replaced by sorry now. Romano Lawrence.
Yes.
Right.
So the facts speaks for themselves from what you've told me. Is there anything you want to add that you think might be helpful to the Commission in its work? For this week, we're concentrating on the list and sub-list and the environmental issues concerned with Assomption. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think would be helpful in our assessment?
Well, yes, you had requested for me for the financial statements.
Yes.
I said to you that everything was ready except for the 2025 ones,
Yes.
and these are now being
Which we
completed
they are now
and
ready?
approved by the board.
Thank you.
They haven't been signed yet, but the signature is taking place as we speak.
Yeah.
So I will,
You can let us have that when it's ready.
Yeah,
It's
give-
not-
yeah,
no rush.
yeah.
Thank you.
But basically, what we're trying to say is that the one of the focuses that that seem to be asking is whether or not there were any huge financial benefit of doing this
Yes.
work, right?
Yes.
Now we were paid as a consultant, right? And the fee for the consultancy was $152,000,
Okay.
and we
That's
have
for
the actual
that's for the ESIA.
for the ESIA, yes, right? So we have an agreement with the developers, IDCC, the actual outline of the agreement which was signed. Then we have the work program under the SIA work. And of course, we have the invoices that we've issued,
Okay.
and we're paid
Thank you.
progress payments under that.
That was the first ESIA conducted by ICS as an organization.
The first, yes.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Weber?
No, I hope I've been answered the questions as
You have.
best
You
of my
have
ability.
been. You've been very helpful to the Commission, and I thank you for it.
And I will attach as well to the paper the actual budget that was
you.
presented to the Aldabra Group Foundation
Please.
regarding the ASIO and Cosmoledo part of it and the one for Assumption. So the one for Assumption is clearly already directed to running conservation center and carrying out supervision over biodiversity assessments.
Thank you.
That sort of thing. But it is nowhere near $5 million.
That's good to know. Thank you so much. We will admit the documents that you are presenting as COI 12. We mark your documents as COI 12. We are grateful to you, Mr. Weber. Thank you.
Yes, I've just got a handwritten timeline, so
That will
if
help
you
as
can
well.
make head or scale
Thank
of
you.
my handwriting.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you.
This last document is the final draft of the March. Our year end is March.
Yes,
Right,
that's
so it's
correct.
March
Our
2025.
tax year, yeah.
Yeah, and that shows the actual. We'll show you the financial results of the consultancy.
We thank you. Thank you. You may leave the commission.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Can you call Greg? He's outside of Sydney. Yes. We are going to have a 5-minute break while we change over for the next witness. Thank you. The next witness is going to be Greg Burke of the ICS.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you take the oath for us?
Yes,
What religion are you?
Christian.
Would you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? I swear
I swear
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
before this commission
before this commission
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
So for the record, Mr. Burke, you can put down your hand. Could you tell us your name, your occupation, and where you are presently working?
So my name is Gregory Burke.
Could you speak up a little bit?
So my name is Gregory Burke. I currently work at Island Conservation Society as Director of Conservation and Science, a role which I have held since April 2023. Previously, I've been working in conservation and science in Seychelles since 2004 till about 2015. I was working with the Seychelles Fishing Authority. From 2015 to 2019, I actually worked internationally as an auditor doing chain of custody for sustainable developments across the globe. I returned to Seychelles in 2019 and worked as an independent consultant doing various projects such as social economic impact assessments, consultancies, until getting the role at ICS in 2023.
Thank you. Could you tell us the qualifications that allow you to perform the functions that you have talked about?
So I have a master's in science in marine biology. Prior to that, as I say, I have about 10, 15 years of experience working with locally with the Seychelles Fishing Authority. I've been involved in EIAs, not myself running them, but as an EIA consultant for other consultants such as EcoSol or Ian Chalet. Over the years, I've been involved in multiple different projects, mainly as the marine expert. Since my background was more marine, I was focusing those times more on the marine aspects of developments, so doing marine surveys, the port expansion, ESIA, and all those things. So I have a quite experience with EIAs.
Thank you. Thank you. And can you tell us whether you're familiar with Assomption?
I had been familiar to Assumption prior to my role at ICS simply by having worked at SFA, taking vessels and passing by it. I knew of Assumption as my interest in conservation in the islands. I had never been to Assumption prior to my role at ICS.
And had you been to Aldabra?
No, I had not been to Aldabra either.
Thank you. Can you now tell us how you first knew about the project in Assomption?
The project was first made aware to me when its discussions happened between board members. I believe it was in the board meeting of ICS, where there was a discussion that we had been approached to conduct.
Could you remember when was this?
That must have been in August, I believe.
Of
August
24,
23.
23?
I think it would have been August in 23 when I first been aware, or even before August. No, August 23, I think, is when it was discussed in the board meeting. Was made aware, and then afterwards...
You were at that board meeting, were you?
I was at that board meeting, and then it was...
A request was made by Mr. Savio of IDC?
At this time, I believe the request had already been made. There had already been discussions happened, but it was at this board meeting that the formal decision was made, and a vote was put forward on whether they felt we would be in a capability and whether the board felt that ICS should undertake ESIAs.
Okay. And could you tell us your actual title of your position in ICS?
So my title is Director of Conservation and Science.
Okay. So you were then approached as the head of conservation to do the assessment for ICS?
I was approached to ask whether I thought ICS had the capabilities to do it, and on discussion with the CEO and the board, I felt that yes, we do have. I had been involved in the process before, and we have a team of people on the islands who are familiar with the islands, on various islands, the outer islands, who do biodiversity and management activities on a daily basis. That's all bread and
Could you speak up a little bit?
So therefore, yes, I felt we had the capabilities to do it, but I also understand that EIAs, having done them, require external consultants. So I had already reached out to external consultants regarding whether it would be something that they would be interested in working off if ICS did an EIA.
So that was the first time that ICS was going to, had been asked to actually carry out an environmental and social impact assessment.
Correct. It's the first time that ICS has taken the lead on it. Afterwards, looking at historical evidence and going through all records, actually all the developments on the outer islands, the original Silhouette development, the original Alphonse Plain development on Alphonse, the original Des Roches development, ICS was always there. And I wasn't ICS this time, but we have the documents, and I've gone over those documents.
You had input in those documents?
Yes, we were main stakeholders, and we actually apparently ICS conducted a lot of the monitoring work that went into. So
the
they
assessments.
did not write the EIA, but they were already providing a lot of the information.
Thank you. And you are aware, therefore, that ICS registered with the Ministry of Environment?
Yes, I was part of the registration because they did contact me to ask whether I felt I was qualified and to ask me in question what consultants I would use. So
Okay.
yes, I was involved in
And
that.
it was approved.
Correct.
And the first part of that exercise is what's called a scoping exercise.
Correct.
Okay. And what did you use as a guide or a template for that scoping exercise?
Previous EIAs that have been conducted in Seychelles, I also contacted the ministry through emails, asked them to provide templates of what the requirements were. The ministry was very clear that they don't have templates and pretty much would not give me a template. So luckily, as I said, ICS had been involved in previous works by Louis Barbet, who'd done ESIA. Since we were there, we had copies of this. I was able to get a hold of these. I've also said I've been involved through other consultants doing ESIAs as part, so I'm familiar with the process.
No. So what templates did you use?
Well, we developed them ourselves, as I'm saying, based
you
on what
built
other
it
stuff.
based on which ones that you looked at?
Previous EIAs done on the outer islands
So
by
give me
Louis
an
Barbet.
just give me an example, for
So
example.
Louis Barbet has done the ESIA for the Great Plains Development, which was Alphonse Resort, so that was an example. Louis Barbet had done the assessment for the road, which was rejected through Silhouette La Passe. So he did EIA, the project was rejected, but that EIA there, and also development of the ESIA for Des Roches, and also the one for Platte. I was not
Okay.
involved in any of those, but those were documents I used
Thank
as
you.
templates.
So you looked at those templates and you adopted one of your own for Assomption.
Correct.
And in adopting a template for Assomption, you were, of course, I would imagine, conscious that Assomption was a very sensitive environment in
Correct.
view of its relationship with Aldabra Atoll.
Correct. And we're talking now about the template of the scoping report.
Yes, only for
So for the
scoping.
scoping report, absolutely. And actually, in our scoping report, one of the main points we put forward is we did not feel that this development was an eco-resort. But to make it clear, as a consultant doing ESIAs, it's not my role to make decisions. It's my role to make judged information and put that information to the authorities.
I'm only, just bear with me and be patient. The questions will come. At this stage, we're just looking at the scoping template or the scoping format that you adopted
Correct.
for Assomption. And you said you use former templates, but probably you also wanted an enhanced one given the sensitivity of Assomption. Am I correct?
Correct. We had requested Bruno already at the scopings to do an assessment because we had identified that there was a very lacking baseline to make sure throughout the scoping process, I myself and other team members of ICS had already been to the island several times. We'd already started doing a baseline assessment, which is presented. We made it clear that we needed more in time to do a full assessment.
Okay.
We had already started
Which baselines assessments were of concern to you that they didn't exist? Which ones?
Oh, well, the main one was the vegetation, which is why we had Bruno Santerre do that.
Yeah.
And that's the main one because once you understand the habitats of the island vegetation, that will then look at what other animals are there. The animals are there because of the habitats. You find birds in trees, you find this. So this template was the most important because it allowed us to identify what areas would be more sensitive and what areas may have more biodiversity than others.
Okay. And there were no baseline studies that had ever been done. I think there was one done a while back on tortoises, on sea turtles.
There's, well, no baseline as a baseline require consistent monitoring. There was baselines in the sense that there were studies done by Stoddart and all, by Percy and all in the 1860s and the 1900s. So we had access, we did literature review and we got that. So we knew it was originally on the island potentially at that time. We knew what had happened through the guano extraction. So there was information on what was there, what was no longer there. We needed more information.
Thank you. So were you present at the meetings with stakeholders and the public for that scoping exercise?
Absolutely, yes.
And what concerns were raised that you took note of and which you included in your scoping report?
All of the concerns that were scientifically valid or had relevance were put forward. There was certain of the things that were unfeasible that we listed. We put the scoping report. We did not address certain things.
Could you give us an example?
For example, there was a proposal to do agriculture. People said we'd rather do agriculture. I'm sorry, but as a conservationist, I did not feel that was a good option, so I did not address that in detail in the scoping report. I addressed what I felt was relevant, and everyone has a right to put an opinion. That doesn't mean that everyone's opinion needs to be addressed. We evaluated it, and we put it in there, but where it needed to be answered, we answered. For us, the biggest risk was that we identified, and what we agreed was, one, the size of development. As I say, we did not feel that it qualified as an eco-resort. We made that very clear in our scoping report.
Okay, I'll stop you there because I have asked of different witnesses what their concept or what their definition of eco-resort is. Would you be able to give us your definition of eco-resort?
Well, and definition of eco-resort for me in terms of a conservation aspect would be a development that takes an approach to cause the least minimal impact on the environment. If I was to describe an ecotourism example in Seychelles, I might describe Cosmoledo with the fly fishing camp by Blue Safari. It is minimal. You're not staying in a large structure. You're literally staying in a 20-foot container so that you can enjoy the nature of the islands. You're paying a very high amount of money to do that. For me, that counts as ecotourism. In the resort of this scale of development, this, I believe, is more of a luxury development. It requires more large air conditioning things, large energy consumptions. I'm not sure, in my opinion as a conservationist, that would qualify as sustainable or ecotourism. However, there is no globally defined standard, and locally even more so. But in my opinion, I would say it would have to be small with as least impact as possible.
Thank you. So you then produced a report.
The scoping report, correct.
And can you tell us what were the main features of your report, your scoping report?
So the main features was highlighting the importance of Assumption. We highlighted that previously it had been described as a wasteland, and we were not in agreement with that. We thought it was a very rich biodiverse environment, which is why we felt that such development should be a new expression of interest. We said it might be better to re-advertise it now with a new expression of interest where it's no longer described as a wasteland, because we have this information to show that it's a very
Who had described it as a wasteland?
Previously reports. I know that the previous government officials had gone on TV in the past and said there's, during the construction of the military base, government officials went up there and said, oh, it's a wasteland, it's being destroyed by guano. For an untrained, unscientific eye, it does look like a wasteland, but you must realize that no agriculture was done on Assumption. So it's actually a very pristine natural environment. Yes, the trees are not big.
Do I understand that at the... just bear with us for a minute. I think they're having difficulty hearing you. That's why I'm so close to mine. I've lost my train of thoughts. Bear with me. Yes, it's interesting. It's interesting that you raise the topic of the extraction of guano. Would it be your scientific opinion that even after the extraction of guano, a new biodiverse environment emerged in Assomption?
Whether it's been new necessarily or whether it is not new is difficult to say. We don't have enough information on what the actual vegetation prior to the extraction. What I can say is that if native plants have recolonized and are now growing, whether they will develop into large forests like they used to, because the amount of guano and soil extracted is unlikely. But also, if you look at pictures of Assumption, look at pictures of Aldabra, there's a lot of similarities. Large grassy plains, large shrub vegetation. So it is a natural environment. Whether there was more large trees or something is up to debate and everything else. But I would say currently it's a very important native habitat.
Okay. Apart from the flora that you have described, are you of the view that other species have emerged since the guano extraction?
I would not say the species have emerged. I would say that the most of the terrestrial species that were effective and pushed off the island by the guano extractions have not returned. Giant tortoises were reintroduced and their population is good. In terms of some of the smaller crustaceans and invertebrates, they are still on the island. How the guano impacted them is uncertain. But I think that most of what was natively there in terms of birds and other large was removed during the guano. There has been none of the real native birds have come back, whether it be the Aldabra species. Currently there's the white eyes on the island,
yes.
But that is not native either. That's, white eyes are one of the most successful colonizer pioneer species. So these are the Madagascar white eye probably flew over and is recolonized. Whether there was an original species on the island, probably there was. And probably if these white eyes stay on the island for another 1,000 years, they will evolve into an endemic species. That's just
Thank you.
nature.
Can I just stop you? Are you having difficulties with the sound? Do you want a moment?
Perfect. while I've got a break. Yes, this is a clean one.
Okay, thank you. We will resume. You talked about some of the species. It's often highlighted as well that there is a substantive butterfly population on Aldabra. You took that on Assomption.
Correct. There is an extensive butterfly population, actually on a lot of the outer islands, Farquhar,
Okay.
Astove, you have them. I think there's been more attention to them on Assumption than other islands simply because there isn't much else to put attention to.
Okay. So, in terms of the scoping exercise, I would assume you visited the island.
Correct.
And when you went there, you noticed that the runway had already been extended.
Correct. I believe my first visit to the island, let me just pull up my timeline. So I think I first visited the island was between the 9th and the 14th of September of 2003. It was after we had discussed...
2023.
2023. It's just after we had discussed approval on whether we do. And that at that point, we went up to the island to see the island because I wanted to first understand what the island was, what was already happening, and also to meet with the developers and understand what they wanted to do on the island. So on this first meet, it was meeting with their architects and the people on the island to understand what they had in plan to do on Assumption.
What was your first impression of the developers? I'm going to be very direct with you. Did you have any impression that they recognize the ecological fragility, the ecological importance of the island?
No, I've worked with many developers over the year. I would say that, like most developers, these ones are more interested about getting their project off the ground. There's, there is a few projects I've worked with in Seychelles where it really is environmentally the footprint front first, but I did not feel that that was the approach currently had been done. They had a plan, they wanted to do their plan, and we were kind of we were telling them they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that, and they were getting fairly upset of us. That was from this first meeting because their original master plan, following that, we literally told them, we will not do an EIA on this. You either start making some adjustments and then we can start talking.
Okay. But at that very initial visit, you already noticed that the runway had been extended.
At that point, there was clearing taking place, and there was actually a team on the island conducting ground penetrating radar. So there was a team from, I believe, South Africa that had been brought down by IDC. So the vegetation had been cleared around the runway because they were using sleds and doing ground penetrating radar to look at the sinkholes and the hydrology before doing the runway. So no, the runway had not been started, but there was work that had started in preparation. So like I say, clearing it was doing, and there was a team.
The clearing was being done by hand or by machinery?
When
That
I
you
arrived
noticed,
there,
that you observed?
when I observed, it looks like clearing was not happening while I was there. It had been done. It looked like it had been done by machinery for the airport, yes.
You could see scrape marks?
Yes, you could see clear marks that the tractors had been used.
And as an environmentalist, was that a sound practice?
Absolutely no, which is why we were then curious on what approval had been done for that. We were then informed that approval for the runway had already been approved through MACE, through a Class 2 EIA at that point.
It was only a Class 2 EIA, and ICS, in any case, had never been consulted.
We had
at
never
that
been
stage.
consulted.
Thank you. So after your visit there, what happened?
So after the visit there, let's see, so we then finally got registered as an EIA consultant. After this visit, after discussions, we said, okay, let's try this. There was that in Grand Bab as well. So we said, let's try the registration. So we went through the process. We got registered. And then on the 20th of October, we did a day trip to the island.
Did you receive your tour before you went back to the island, your terms of reference?
No, terms of reference was not received until we'd submitted a scoping report.
Or you hadn't done a scoping report, you were still assessing it?
This is still assessing, yeah. Between the our original surveys on the island, which would have been the 9th to the 14th of September when I first started doing biodiversity studies, to the scoping report being submitted, terms of reference received on the 17th of April.
Okay.
So it was already 5 months of work where we were working before we received, and we were already doing work.
Okay, at that stage, Mr. Burke, was pressure being exerted for you to hurry up?
At this point, no, because we hadn't signed an agreement yet with the clients. There was no pressure.
Okay, thank you. Carry on.
So then I say we did a day trip to the island on the 20th of October, once again to meet with the architects and once again explain to them what could and could not be done on procedures. We then had the inception meeting with Mace on the 26th of January.
So by that stage, you had an idea of where the hotel was going to be constructed.
Yes, we already had an idea because they were unwilling to change much from their main master
Okay,
plan.
so they
except for
wanted to be on the
setbacks.
east side of the island where the very long sandy beach is.
Correct,
The most beautiful part of the island as far as tourism is concerned.
correct.
Okay. And maybe perhaps one of the most biodiverse area of the island?
No, I doubt it would be the most biodiverse.
But one of them.
area. No, not
Not
at all.
necessarily.
Beachfronts are not necessarily biodiverse areas. The coastal
Okay.
zone is not necessarily a biodiverse area. It has important sensitive habitats such as nesting grounds for sea turtles,
Yes.
also nesting ground for tortoises. But there's much more valuable habitats such
Okay.
as the dune habitats and the sinkhole habitats, the marshes on the island.
And you had at that stage seen and taken cognizance of the fact that there was a jetty on that part of the island,
Absolutely, yes.
the only jetty,
Yes.
and dilapidated jetty, if I may say so.
Correct, and at this point on the plans, there was propositions to do two jetties, one in the north of the island, one similar to the position where the old jetty is. It was at this point that we'd start discussing and saying we were not in agreement with that. We would prefer that the old jetty be rebuilt. And
That was
only
still at the
that.
scoping stage.
This was even before the
The
scope,
scoping
before
stage.
we'd received, this was like I say, from the beginning when we were meeting, we were very adamant that we're in Seychelles, we follow Seychelles rules and Seychelles laws. Assumption is part of a zone, is surrounded by a Zone 1 SMSP. So we were very clear and transparent
Okay.
with the developers on
And
this.
you were already aware at that stage that there had been no marine spatial plan drawn up, or ever there had been any studies of the marine environment.
The marine environment had been studied. There was bathymetric studies that were done when the Indian military base, so we had access to those, the bathymetric surveys. There's diving surveys that take place by not just ICS, but other
I'm
people.
talking in terms of the jetty itself.
In terms of jetty, no, because the jetty's on sand. So
Yeah.
in terms of surveys, nothing interesting to
And
survey
in terms
there.
of the projected jetty, the enlargement of the jetty, and in terms of the length of the jetty that they were proposing.
What we were proposing, what we had stated, was that it would be built to the original dimensions, except for a floating extension that went off to a certain amount. Based on all evidence of going to the island, going there, visiting, we did not feel that there was any sensitive habitat that would be affected by this proposal because, one, it was redeveloping a jetty that had been there for 100 years and already shaped the ecology of the island. So restoring it to its original thing was not going to have a negative impact. Actually, we recommended it would potentially have a positive impact because having hard cover and stuff in a sandy area would allow coral and other colonizing species to colonize this.
You were not of the view that the extension of the jetty would affect the sand dunes on the island.
Absolutely.
It would
not.
have no effect whatsoever in terms of silt deposits.
Not if it was to be rebuilt to the original plans, because, like I say, for 100
Yes,
years.
but if it was going to be extended,
The extended was on pilings, and no, we did not feel that that would have any impact on sedimentation or currents on the islands.
thank you. So you then put that in a report, in a scoping report.
No. Correct.
And one of the matters that you raised in the scoping report was the biodiversity assessment.
Correct.
And you had talked at that stage also about the fact that there needed to be at least a 1-year monitoring.
Correct.
Okay. So that went into your report.
Yes, absolutely.
And then it went to the Department of Environment,
Correct.
and there was feedback from the Department of Environment.
There was feedback, and then eventually a terms of reference as well issued based on the scoping report. So the
Thank you.
feedback letter, Mr. Weber already
He has already explained to us, so you don't have to repeat that. We have that in the record. And then TOR was given to you?
The TOR was received. I was fairly disappointed with the TOR.
In what sense, Mr. Burke?
In the scoping report, I had literally said, I don't think it's an eco-resort, a new expression of interest. That was an invitation to government, to the authorities to act on it. They did not. They gave me a terms of reference, which was boilerplate terms of reference given to any consultant. It did not really reflect any of the stuff that I had said. The terms of reference should have said a biodiversity assessment for 1 year needs to be carried out.
Before the project starts.
Correct. I was then issued a terms of reference, which I had to follow.
So you felt bound by the terms of reference.
I mean, legally, I am bound by the terms of reference. As an EIA consultant, I am required to produce what is in the terms of reference. It's not me that decides what I put in there. It is government based on my scoping report. My scoping report is a document that is 100% my own.
Yes.
The EIA report is based on the terms of
Yeah.
reference.
Were the terms of reference circulated to you, a draft terms of reference circulated to you before the final terms of reference?
No draft. I received only a final.
Did you contact the Department of Environment and say, look, I had raised a few matters, I don't see them in the terms of reference?
We did contact. We had multiple meetings regarding certain things. We never really got any feedback from the...
Did you raise the fact that you did not think it would be sufficient under the terms of reference to give a proper ESIA assessment and report based on the terms of reference? It would not be holistic, it would not be comprehensive.
I do not know if we ever had those discussions because I don't think we ever got a response back to our inquiries for me to be able to make those
Do you know who
requests.
drafted the terms of reference?
I believe would be my EIA officer, who would have been Beatrice Morel, I believe, on this project.
She drafted it. And
Along with Nanette Law, who was DG at the moment. They would have been the ones, I imagine. I heard they had input as well from other people, but that's just what I've heard.
Okay.
As for official channels, it came to me through Beatrice Morel, who was my EI officer, and it was signed by Nanette Law.
Yeah. So did you work closely with Beatrice?
With a lot of email exchanges, absolutely.
Did you raise it with her?
I do not know. I would have to check my emails.
Okay. Okay. So then you did the ESIA. Could you tell us what were the positives, the negatives, the concerns you had? The main ones.
Well, the main ones are the same things that we stated. We wanted to be collecting 1 year of data. We felt this was all necessary. Like I say, once again, we were then bound by the terms of reference and to the government and how they wanted us to do things. So there was timelines we had to meet. Some of these timelines were put on us by the developers, which we did not really respect because we just told them we don't follow their timelines. We follow the timelines put by the MACE. So we followed those timelines.
So you were being pressurized.
By the developers, yes, but we just did not respond to them.
Okay.
The developers
What kind of pressure were they exerting on you?
They wanted weekly updates on where we were, on when we would get a response from government, whether we could follow up with government, and I was very clear that I followed the process. MACE has 2 weeks to get back to me. If it goes over 2 weeks, I will contact them. But until the 2 weeks, I just ignored.
At what stage did you agree to the fact that because it had not been raised in the TOR, at what stage did you agree to put in your report, or I don't know whether you agreed or whether you decided to say that a concurrent biodiversity assessment could be done at the same time as the building of the hotel?
Well, we didn't say necessarily as the building of the hotel. We said as the project starting. And the way the EIA was written and how we had put in our things, we felt that it could be done because, for example, the first step would have been proper. And if everything had been enforced, and if our EIA had been enforced, and you read our EIA, the first step would have been first manual land clearing, identification of every tree and species, which is part of the...
Yeah.
If
But
all that had been done...
would you agree with me, Mr. Burke, that that is not best international practice?
There
in
is
any
no
case?
best international practices for EIAs.
Well, I beg to disagree because
every country has a process.
Mr. Burke, I beg to disagree because several pieces of literature has been given to us, and I'm putting to you, when I say I put it to you, you can disagree or disagree with me. I put it to you that best international practice is that a biodiversity assessment is made before development takes place. And for me, it's logical because a lot is lost
Agree.
as a project develops.
Completely agree with that. That is the best practice which should be done. Once again, I follow the laws of Seychelles.
No, I'm asking you whether you suggested that of your own volition or did you feel pressurized to come to this compromise?
Oh, no. We had to come to this compromise very simply because the pressure from both the authorities and from the developers to produce a report on a timeline set
So
forth
in the
by
best possible worlds, you would have preferred that the biodiversity assessment be done prior to the development taking place.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And so when you came to that compromise, you did state in your report that there were certain safeguards to be put in place.
Correct. A lot of safeguards.
So please tell us what these were.
Well, the risk matrix within the ESI has a lot of safeguards. So, I mean, the first safeguard that would have kicked off would be the first thing would have been placement of the villas. We had stated to do placement of villas, you had to do ground penetrating radar first. That would identify where the cave systems were. That, from what I can tell, we were never, there's no enforcement, so I do not know if that was done. Site clearing had to be done by hand, as long as having an environmental officer online, so we could do biodiversity assessments. So the plan was for everything to happen in conjunction, but that would require the process to be followed.
It required the presence of at least one environmental officer present.
No, it required the presence of an environmental officer, of a conservation team on the island, of a biosecurity officer, and other things as put forth in our risk matrix.
Your mandate ended with you giving over the report.
Our end date ended the moment the report was accepted by government and a notice of acceptance issued.
Were you surprised that the notice of acceptance was issued, given the fact that you had raised certain matters in your report?
No, I was not surprised. Like I say, I've been an EIA consultant on many developments, and I've seen many developments with projects, with things happen, so it did not come as a surprise for me. I think that is the norm, and I stated when we first did the public meeting that, in my opinion, the biggest flaw with EIAs in Seychelles is the EIA process. That was at the public meeting, Rush Kaimo. I stated that, and Annette Law was very upset by me stating that, and we got into, I think it was reported by SBC, they covered it. But I've always said that the biggest flaw with the EIA process is the fact that it's the consultant paying the client, the EIA consultant. It should be consultant paying the environment. That way, MACE is held accountable versus us. And I stand to that. I still think that the whole process of EIAs in Seychelles and globally is flawed to benefit developers.
Okay.
And that's global.
Thank you. Thank you. And as I've just put to you, your mandate ended at that point.
Yes. We
Okay.
were expecting to not end because we expected our mandate to end as EIA consultants and for our mandate as the conservation managers on the island to start. That never happened. I had employed staff, so I had already contacted staff for Assumption, biosecurity staff. In fact, when we heard the State of the Nation address, I then had to contact these staff and I had to tell them I no longer had a job for them or move them to another island, which caused me problems with
Okay, well,
immigration.
let's go to that then. Mr. Weber told us that the ICS quoted for the work to be done, for the biodiversity assessment and for other matters to be done.
Correct.
And that you were in negotiations with the developers for that to happen.
We were. We were
Yeah.
in negotiations for that. We were in negotiations for them to build our conservation center. I'd already had agreed plans from them, which they'd agreed on what our conservation center would look like, where it would be. All of this was until the State of the Nation.
So you were blindsided then when in February 2025, the president announced in the State of the Nation address that that job was going to the SIF.
Correct.
Personally, did you have any concerns with that?
Personally, yes. Personally, I had concerns because I felt that, it was taking away, I had already invested in time and I had a plan to do stuff. So for me personally, I felt it was a shame. We did, as a result, reach out to SIF on multiple times.
But apart from it being a shame, was SIF equipped to carry out biodiversity assessments?
SIF may be equipped to carry out biodiversity assessments. Their role as ours, doing monitoring and stuff on the outer islands, does fill in a role doing biodiversity assessment. Whether they've done it to the same scale as ICS and in relation to developments, I do not think they have that experience. And actually collecting
Are they not,
biodiversity.
is SIF not primarily concerned with the Aldabra Atoll?
Aldabra Atoll, but also with Vallée des Mets. So in terms of collecting biological data, they are just as capable of ICS. They have people that can do monitoring and everything else.
But the main thrust of their work is conservation of those environments that you've described, Vallée des Mets and...
Their MOAN is environments that do not necessarily have tourism developments in them versus ICS, which is more geared and has more experience working hand in hand with tourism development.
So this is what I'm asking you. So in your view, ICS would have been a better place to carry out the biodiversity assessment than SIF?
Correct. ICS, that's the reason we wanted to do an EIA. We felt that for the outer islands, for working alongside developments, for working along stakeholders like IDC, ICS has experience doing that since 2004, 20 years of experience. We were the best people for it.
Thank you. And did you subsequently learn that many matters that you had concluded and made recommendations for in your report and which had been accepted in a notice of acceptance had not been implemented?
Yes, we were aware of that. We raised that several times. Finally,
Who did you raise that with?
directly, so myself directly through MACE, the CEO
That's the Ministry
and the board.
of Environment and Climate Change, yes.
The board and the CEO, I think, went higher, went to the executive level, to the vice president and to the president, requesting clarification.
And would I be correct to say that these were ignored?
We did not get a response, from my knowledge.
Not even acknowledgement?
No.
At all?
No.
Okay, so in your opinion, what happened?
In my opinion, ICS did a very comprehensive ESIA. Whilst, yes, there can be criticism on how it was done, the ESIA was done in a shirt to protect the environment, and if all mitigation and measures were put in place, we would not be in a situation today. In fact, we are in a situation today because I did a good EIA and because a prohibition notice for not respectance of my EIA was assessed.
So you feel vindicated in a sense?
Yes.
Okay. And do you feel that as we stand now, Assomption and Aldabra are protected properly?
Absolutely not. I think that from the moment that the EIA stopped, the notice of acceptance was done and work started without having the safeguards that we put in place in the risk matrix, with having the safeguards of having officers on the island. Without all of this, I think that the risk have increased significantly, and I think that damage has already been done, and now we need to look at more extensive rehabilitation work.
Okay. I don't know whether you followed some of the testimony yesterday, but there are varying opinions on how far the construction has reached. The developers told us on Monday that they think it's at 50%. We were told yesterday 30% and then 20%. So given the fact, let's say at its worst, 50% of concrete is now standing on the islands over the footprint that you were told was going to be occupied. What is your view of the way forward?
I'm not sure 50% concrete is there yet. I think that more 20% of the concrete work has been done. For me, the biggest damage being done has been the clearing and the leveling of the site without the ground-penetrating radar, because that means we don't know if those sinkholes have been filled, we don't know what was in them, and also we don't know what species were translocated during the clearing.
You never went for a visit when the construction was already there?
Since then, I have not been to the island. I did one stopover. I stopped over on the island maybe 3 months ago for a few minutes while I was heading to Cosmo
So you didn't see the development?
I saw from a distance, no, not the development, from the flight. I took pictures for my own interest as we were going around.
Well, I can tell you I observed sinkholes filled in with concrete. What would be your view of that?
I mean, that should not have happened. I mean, one of the biggest things that we said is that that should not be done. We said that buildings should be raised on pillars, minimal backfilling should be done, and ground-penetrating radar. So for us, the most important thing, and one of the reasons we raised this is because we already knew that the hydrology of the island had already been affected. The runway crosses the whole island, which already affects. This development goes across the west coast, so it would have a negative impact on the hydrology if this work hasn't been done. From what I can tell, this work is not being done. I have not heard of ground-penetrating radar being done, and I have seen the photos of the site clearing, and what is very clear is everything's being filled because it's leveled.
Were you aware that the first stop notice was issued in, I think, June 2025?
It was because of myself and ICS that the stop also was issued. It was ICS we contacted and we threatened to go public with certain information if a stop notice. And the main thing was we knew there was no biosecurity officer. We knew that certain things were not happening. And at that point, we were being very criticized for being ICS not doing our job. So we felt that we needed to raise this matter.
Thank you.
And when we were ignored, we threatened to
And
go
are you
public.
aware that subsequent to that, a visit to the island took place by the president, by several high members of government, and also members of the National Assembly. And shortly after a meeting in State House, the stop notice was lifted.
I am aware that the visit was done. My office is there, so I see every time anyone goes up to an island. So yes, I'm aware. I was not made aware of the visit. I knew it happened because I see people going on and off planes.
Okay. And do you know whether the matters that you raised that caused a stop notice to be issued, whether these were remedied?
They were not.
They were not remedied. And yet the stop notice was lifted.
Correct.
There was then a second stop notice in November. You're aware of that? In November 25.
Yes, this one, yes.
Yes.
Not prohibition order.
Prohibition
Yes.
order from the environment.
Yes.
And that is still in place.
Correct.
Okay.
We were very much in favor. In fact, ICS publicly said thank you because, once
Okay.
again, it shows that all work is finally being listened
And
to.
are you of the view that that prohibition order should operate for the future?
Absolutely. That prohibition order needs to stay until everything is done. But even more so, more work now needs to be done to assess the damage already done. We had not assessed this damage that's currently being done. We had assessed an impact where, if all rules were followed, certain things
Okay.
were counted for. Now that certain things have happened, I think that additional work now needs to take place.
Okay. And going forward, do you think that such a development should be given the go-ahead?
Personally, once again, in the state, I feel that what should have been done is a smaller development, an eco-resort advertised based on a new expression of interest, showing, because we now know that Assumption is not a wasteland, is actually a very valuable environment that could be attractive to eco-loving people.
Thank you. Just bear with me. Let's see if I can do it comprehensive. So we are where we are, and you say maybe 20% of the concrete is there. Others say there's
From
more.
what I've seen from pictures.
So what do we do now? What can we do with it?
Well, the reality is 20% of the concrete, from what I've been able to see, I've seen that most of the staff accommodation has been done.
That's almost completed.
That's
yes.
almost completed. And from what I can understand, the 4 or 5 residential villas are completed. When I was last on the island, no work whatsoever had started on any of the actual resort
Most of the
components.
foundations are in place for the villas. We observe them.
Okay,
ourselves personally.
so that now has taken. Like I say, damage has already been done. What is the next steps and how to remedy? Whether they be demolished, whether they be transformed.
What is your
whether
view
they
on
just, I can't make that assessment now. I would need to go to the island, see what has already been done. Certain areas you may want to just leave it and let nature take over. Some areas you might want to have human interaction to get back. I cannot make that assessment because I haven't seen what's happened on the island.
Okay. Are you aware, I don't know whether when you visited, you were aware of the number of workers on Assomption?
We were made aware. It was one of the reasons that we requested for the original stop notice, is because we had been informed that potentially there was additional workers, not on the side of IDC. In fact, IDC had contacted us, had said they were being pressured to have more. They stood by what we said, what we had said in the EI, which was 500. So IDC, I don't think, has ever had more than 500 workers on the island themselves. We received several requests from them, stating what was the requirement from the notice of exemption. We said 500. We do know that requests were coming in, and actually IDC contacted us to say, hey, how can we stop this request? And we said, well, very simple. The notice of acceptance says 500, so perfect.
As we stand, there are still 444 workers on the island, and they've been there since the stop notice was issued in November.
Yes.
Have you any concerns about that?
Of course, there's concerns, but it's also understandable. I mean, that's the reality of working on the outer of the islands. I have sometimes only 3 staff on an island. They're stuck for 6 months. It is difficult and very expensive to operate on the outer islands. I understand that getting 440 staff off the island, if I'm just off the top of my head, that's a lot of sums, because that's about 50 flights just to get those things, which now being, so that's a very expensive procedure that someone's going to have to do.
Secondly, I've raised the matter of the jetty with you. You realize that the developer never reconstructed the jetty, and all the construction material from Mahe, perhaps 4 barges a month, with a tonnage that was described yesterday, was being barged to the island and landed on the sandy part of the beach next to the jetty. Do you have any concerns about that?
Regarding the offloading the barge, yes, I've always got the biosecurity concerns, and therefore having the jetty would have reduced those biosecurity because you'd have a smaller point of entry. However, in the actual activity of barging, that's regular activity on the islands. Barges come, they come into that area, they offload. It's usually a fixed area all the time. So in terms of the actual barging activities, no. I will note that our ESIA had not accounted for that volume, so therefore the biosecurity measures and the number of personnel reflected on report would need to be increased based on the increased frequency of barges. But the actual activity of a barge coming to an island and coming off, that happens on every island, is a reality of the island. I don't see an issue with that. I see an issue how there is now more barges than was originally planned for, and how that affects the biosecurity aspects of management of the island.
Part of the biosecurity aspects, is there any negative, I won't say negative, is there any effluent from those barges that might impact on?
Unlikely. I mean, if a barge was to run aground, potentially, but even then, the amount of fuel and stuff on a barge, I don't see how that would have a large impact. A tanker or something else transporting fuel run around, yes, that would have a much larger impact. These barges are mainly producing, transporting material, wood and stuff, which would either float or sink to the bottom. And the amount of fuel, I don't think from a barge operation would necessarily pose a risk directly to a large one. It might pose a small risk.
You also made a provision in your report about incineration, or perhaps not having incineration on the island. Are you aware, or do you know, whether any incineration or burning has taken place on the island?
I am not aware, once again, since I have
Would
not
you be
been there.
concerned if you were told there was a burning on the island?
Well, burning of certain materials, no. I would expect actually for biosecurity measures, you would want certain materials to be disposed of. I would be more concerned understanding of where it's being burned, how it's being disposed of, and what materials are being disposed of.
Do you know how solid waste is being dealt with on the island?
No.
Did you make any provision for that?
There should have been a sewage treatment plan for solid waste, which was a containerized. Per the EIA, we had a commitment from the developers and from IDC to set up a containerized sewage treatment plant that would handle minimum 500 people's worth of sewage. So that was what was agreed. Whether that has been done, I cannot tell you.
Thank you. When we questioned the two representatives of Ocean Breeze on Monday, we went through the different matters that had to be remedied for the stop notice to be lifted. And they said they had met all of them. All right? So I'm going to tell you what they are.
I'm familiar with what's
You
in
are.
the stop notice, and I can tell
The
you.
7 of them, the suspension of works, okay? The biosecurity management plan review, has that been done?
No, it has not been. So the biosecurity management plan has been done, but based on the new additional barges and everything else, I don't think a review has been done.
The biodiversity assessment?
Has not even started. Well, has started, but we need 1 year of data, so no.
Jetty planning application?
I heard yesterday that it had been done, but I am no longer involved in the process.
Okay. The nursery planning?
When we were kicked off, we had plans for a nursery. That was all being agreed for. From my understanding, that was never done after we were kicked off.
The species relocation?
That has not been done because I've already seen that clearing has happened, so no.
Okay. And on,
You can actually see the report there, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the seventh,
They say it's compliant.
Yeah, no.
No?
the 7th one is the updated CEMP and EMP.
I have not seen it, so I would not be able to comment on that.
All right. Thank you. We have finished with our questions, and we just wondered if there was anything that you wanted to add that you think would help the work of the Commission.
No, I would just like to thank the Commission. I think this is important that this has happened. I think it's vital that, our EIA is finally being upheld and the conditions are being met. I would love to, hopefully down the line, ideally ICS will someday be back on Assumption and back to doing our conservation monitoring activities, but I'm glad that currently things have stopped on the island, and I think that, whether the project starts again or whether a new project take over, we need to first look at what's already being done and how we need to address those issues.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Burke. You may leave the commission.
Thank you.
And sorry, before you leave, all the documentation that you've referred to, do you formally admit them to the commission?
Yes, I will send those formally to the Commission.
And all the documents you referred to, we will refer to them, the bundle, as Commission of Inquiry, that's COI 13.
30.
You got the lucky number 13.
Perfect. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you
may
very much.
leave. If you could have just 5 minutes for a changeover for the next witness. Thank you.
So I'll send everything by email then.
You can indeed.
Perfect.
The email for the commission is secretary@assumptioninquiry.com.
Secretary at assumptioninquiry.com. Perfect.
I think it's on the summons.
It's on the
that we sent
summons,
you.
yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. Thank you.
Let me check. Test. Mr. Esparon, say 1, 2, 3 for us.
1, 2, 3, testing.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back to the continuation of the work of the Commission. I just have to let people know who perhaps had a list of who was coming today that unfortunately Dr. Frauke Dogle cannot be present. She's unwell, and her replacement, unfortunately, is also unwell. So we shall be at another time be taking the testimony of those witnesses. However, we have with us Mr. Guy Esparon, who has agreed to come in earlier and who is here now. So, Mr. Esparon, welcome to the Commission.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Commissioner.
being here. Would you like to take the oath?
Yes, I will.
Are you a Christian?
Yes,
Would you please raise your right hand? Repeat after me. I swear
I swear
that the evidence
that the evidence
I shall give
I shall give
before this Commission
before this Commission
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
but nothing,
but
and
nothing-
nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Mr. Esparon, for the record, can you state your name?
My name is Guy Patrice Esparon.
What is your profession?
My profession, right, I don't have a PhD, I don't have a master's. You know, my highest level of education was Form 4 at Royal a long time ago. And everything I've learned is from observing and listening, and has a passion for the environment. And basically, maybe Aldabra, that's the place that opened my eyes.
In your life experience, have you visited many sensitive ecological sites in the world?
I have, you know, I would say for the past 20 years, I've traveled north, south, Arctic, Antarctic, all the continents, and basically working on expedition ships, small ships with, yes.
Excuse me, could you please close the door?
Yes, small ships with a lot of basically people with passion for nature. You know, I wouldn't say all environmentalists, but people that we take to see birds, you name it. You know, and that has added on to my knowledge also.
Thank you. Are you familiar with Aldabra?
Very much so.
How long have you been visiting Aldabra?
I've been visiting Aldabra for the past, what's that, 25 years now, but I also manage Aldabra,
So
you know.
how many years or how much time have you spent on Aldabra?
I spent 5 years on Aldabra on 2 occasions. The first time was in 2000 until 2003, going to 4, and then I came back in 2006 to 2007.
Thank you. Are you familiar with Assomption?
Very much so. I've been traveling to Assumption from that epoch, you know, not necessarily working on Assumption, but a lot of dealing with the past island managers, because the early days, we didn't have communication like today, so the SSB radio was our main communication at 1900 hours every night. So I got to meet all the managers on the airways, and for that period, the legend of those islands.
How well do you know Assomption?
I know Assumption very well.
Would I be correct to say you know the physiology of the island, you know the ecosystem of the island, you're familiar with it?
Very much so.
Is there any species of interest to you that you have noticed, any of the flora, any of the fauna that you would like to highlight, which is of special interest?
Yes, actually, I was a bit surprised when I first went to the first meeting that Assumption was classified as a kind of
When you say the first meeting, you mean the scoping?
the scoping meeting, yeah, when they did the first presentation. I went along, and I was a bit kind of taken or sad that Assumption was just a wasteland, which was costing IDC 11 million.
Who stated that it was a wasteland?
I think it was the chairman of IDC, Mr. Savi, that, he was basically justifying, the importance of the development. And I thought, no, that's not quite true, because going back to history, if I may say so, Captain Nicholas Morphy, in 1756 discovered the island.
On the 15th of August,
On the 14th of August.
and that's hence the name Assomption.
That's right, because of the feast day the next day. But in 1898, Abbots had discovered the Abbots booby. I mean, mind you, the island had boasted the 4 species of boobies.
And the Abbott's booby is now extinct.
It's
on
extinct, it's
Assomption.
gone, yes. The only remaining colony is in Christmas Island, which I will come back to that later on with the biosecurity. But currently on Cosmoledo, we have the 3 other species. But by, I would say, 1937, all the vegetation, because the Abbott's booby needed tall trees, all the vegetation had been cleared. And also, this going back to literature, and the guano mining started. By the way, they took 160,000 tons of guano. Some deposits were 50 feet high. And as we go along, I was surprised.
So it was a very different looking island.
Oh,
than it is
definitely.
today.
But Commissioner, could you imagine 50 feet of birds deposit? How many seabird was there?
Yeah.
It is said by scientists it boasts the world's largest seabird population. And at the moment, when you look at the Aldabra group of islands, which is so close to my heart, and Cosmoledo, especially Cosmoledo, I value Cosmoledo more than Antarctic or the Arctic. Cosmoledo is a gem with the 3 species, its lagoon, and she needs special
And it's in
attention.
close proximity to Assomption as well.
Yes, very,
Okay. So let's focus on Assomption now. So the first destruction really of the flora and fauna occurred when they were mining guano.
That's right.
Okay. Guano exploitation stopped and a new ecosystem developed.
Yes,
Would you agree with me?
definitely.
And how do you rate this ecosystem?
Well, the ecosystem in itself is very special because, I was listening before. I mean, what do we know has a full biodiversity audit made? Maybe they've made a few. Those sinkholes, what was in those sinkholes? Maybe the upside-down jellyfish? How do we know if it wasn't done? Why was the whole kind of scenario so pushed forward so quickly,
When was the last time you visited Assomption before the hotel development had started?
I've been traveling to Assumption every year since I've been working on expedition ships, I would say from October to sometime March, April, since 2004 onwards. And this time, from the last visit, we did, but I was also there in October.
Okay. So when did you...
Last October.
So you first heard of the Assomption project when you went to that scoping meeting?
Actually, no, I didn't, because I saw I heard of it while I was on the ship, because I'm the one that basically was saying, what's going on here? And by the way, just let me mention before I jump ahead, that I'm also a board of SIF.
Yes, I was going to
and-
come to that. Don't
yeah,
worry.
thank you. Okay, and I noticed in must have been 2023, 24, 23 maybe in October that there was movement on the island because the island manager at that time would forbid me from going anywhere past the jetty because I'm the one that picks up all the authorities from the ship. You know, they fly from Mahe to sometime the jetty, sometime we can't. We have to go to where ex-president Albert Rene was going to build his
Can you
house.
explain to people who don't know Assomption, when is the best time to travel to Assomption?
The best time to travel to Assumption, basically in October you have a window, you know, how do you say, October, November. But December, January, February, March, we're in the cyclone belt. You know, the weather is very unpredictable. And myself, my experience over the years, I see that the weather is changing from year to year.
Okay.
You know, and
But from what you've described to me, even to your visit to Assumption, these were limited. There was restricted access to different parts of the island. Is that
yes,
correct?
yes. I mean, how do you say?
Do you know the reason for that?
The reason was because of security. One was because of the champignon, the sinkholes, you know, which was because a lot of the time we usually always lead hikes. You know, if we are a group, I'm leading a hike with the ship, you know, there's different guide. By the way, I work as a guide and I do lectures on ships as a naturalist, you know. And so we tend to concentrate our people in one area, which
Okay.
is
Okay.
the front beach.
The sinkholes that you mentioned in Assumption, are they similar to the sinkholes on Aldabra?
In a way, yes.
Okay.
You know. I mean, how do you say? It's just as more an assumption because they are everywhere.
Okay.
You know.
Are these caused by the karst limestone itself, or is it because of guano mining?
Guano mining is probably one of the factors, but there's also some natural one. The natural one mostly coastal area, you know, but the middle one where basically where the birds used to roost.
So when you saw activity for the first time on Assumption, you were concerned?
Definitely. Actually, my first concern, Commissioner, was while living in Australia, I used to work for the mining company, especially in the territory, from mobilizing...
You worked in Australia for a period of time?
Yes, I did, 37 years.
Thank
I
you.
also served in the Australian Army, and I've done UN peacekeeping duties. I was in Rwanda during the genocide in other countries. But in the territory, the mining industry, I would say probably early 80s, they started being very strict in biosecurity from one state to the other because of seeds dispersion and all the other stuff they used to introduce through soil. So my first concern was when I saw a large bulldozer at the jetty on Aldabra, excavators.
And that was as early as 2023?
I would say maybe early 24.
24.
Very early 24.
Mm-hmm.
Could be late 23, but early 24. You know, I'm sure they will have the correct time when the machinery. But it was some time ago.
Okay, so you noticed that from a vessel that was sailing past, and you had to come to Assumption?
No. The machinery was already ashore.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
But you came to know of that because at that time you were on a trip.
Yes, I was on a cruise ship.
And
yes.
this is where now I'm coming to the fact that
Yes.
you are also a board member of the Seychelles Island Foundation.
Yes, I am.
When you noticed that, that had not been brought to your attention by the SIF.
No, not at all. Actually, I'm the one. I was the what's the word for it? The whistleblower.
The whistleblower.
Yeah.
So the SIF are the guardians, so to speak, of Aldabra.
Definitely.
And from what you were saying to me, they had not at this stage been informed of any development on Assumption.
Commissioner, if they knew, maybe the chair or the CEO would have known, you know, but I cannot speculate because I don't know.
And the chair being?
The chair is Mr. Bernard Georges.
Okay.
But
that was not communicated to you as a board member?
No. I won't say left out of the loop, but we find out very much later on.
Okay.
Yes.
So it hadn't been brought to the attention of the SIF as guardians of
That's correct.
Aldabra,
Yes,
so to
that's
speak.
correct.
So you raised it.
I raised it. Yeah, I brought it at the board meeting and mentioned. I took photos because the first thing I noticed there was a lot of vehicle from Qatar with Qatar number plates and 2 large fire truck with Qatar number plate.
Were these near the IDC village or were these near the airport?
They were all parked. The 2 fire truck were parked at the airport,
Okay.
but the 4-wheel drive vehicle were parked at the village next
And
to
at
the
this
old guano
stage,
shed.
at this stage, had work commenced around the airport?
There was, yes, very much so, and that was one of my first concern, and also my other concern, which I raised when they had the scoping meeting, because of the amount of sand they had shifted from the sand dune to cover the apron. Because when we visited Assumption, prior to that, one of the activities for the guests was to go and see the giant tortoises crossing the runway or at the airport. But the other thing was the amount of vagrant and migratory bird that came on the apron, because the apron of the airstrip was all grass at that time with giant tortoises. But my greatest concern was, I thought, the magnitude of this runway, how many small hatchling have they covered, which a question I did ask, because there was sand that had built roads, the whole area had been backfilled.
So no biodiversity assessment, as far as you are concerned, was carried out before the runway was extended?
I don't think so. I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
Okay. So you raised that concern.
I did raise that concern.
And how was it addressed?
Well,
if at all?
like everything else, I'm only a small voice. There was more importance about 5 different restaurants, and because question was not about the creolity of the development, but none were, they all kind of Mediterranean type dwellings.
Did the SIF, and I know that you have signed confidential statements with SIF, but I can tell you that the Commission goes beyond that. The Commission can order the information, and we are ordering for the information from the minutes. Did the SIF itself, as a board, raise these concerns with IDC and with government?
Yes, we did, but it was early days,
Okay.
and I'm not talking about my other board members' colleague, but for myself, I could see that this was being pushed along a lot by higher than we could.
That was the impression you had?
That's the impression I had, yes.
You had.
Yeah.
And Mr. George, as a member, was as the leader of government business, did he have any response for you as board
Yes,
members?
he did. I mean, he had concern too. But I always thought, in one way or another, that I felt like his hands was tied up too.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And subsequently, then you went to the scoping meeting. You raised concerns at the scoping meeting.
Yes, I did.
And were these included in the scoping report by Mr. Burke?
I'm not quite sure.
You never saw the scoping report?
No, I read a little bit, but I didn't go thoroughly through it.
Okay.
Because the other thing I like to mention is, when I first got nominated to be on the SIF board.
How long ago was that?
That
Mr.
was 3.5 years ago.
Mhm.
And we're going through our second term now. I don't know if I'll get reelected, but something I like to bring up was that part of being on the board, we all had to write some sort of strategic priority for the island, especially for Aldabra. And one of my concerns was that a small transit hotel is built on Assumption, or renovate ex-President Rene dwelling into a 24-room dwelling, a small Coast Guard setup for basically for the Seychelles Navy, because I also saw plan and also the design for the runway when the Indian wanted to build a big, humongous development there. But none of my priorities were addressed. But
none of your concerns
concern
were
were,
addressed.
yeah.
None of your concerns were addressed. And subsequently, a letter of acceptance was given to the developers
Yes.
to go ahead. Were you aware of the conditions for the development in terms of environmental conditions that had to be met?
You know, there was a lot for us at SIF because we had the Aldabra House, we had the rat and cat eradication, we had lots and lots. We had Fonferdinand, we have, Vallée de Mai, we had a lot of things already stuff for us to deal with. And I felt that we really didn't need that one.
Okay. Okay. So, in any case, the development started
Yes.
and took place, and you were aware that there was no environmental officer appointed to oversee the works.
Yes.
And again, concerns were raised.
Yes.
Did SIF raise those concerns?
We did, yes.
And you personally also raised those
Yes.
concerns, and it was
Yes.
still not addressed.
Yes.
Were you surprised when the first stop notice was issued?
Yes, I did. But I was more surprised when work carried on anyway, as if nobody took any notice.
Yes. And the stop notice was lifted 4 days later.
Because I remember Mrs. Law, I think there might have been 26 clauses that they had breached. She wanted this rectified. But then just of a sudden, it was business as usual.
Before that stop notice was issued, there was an AGM of the SIF in March 25.
Yes.
Would you agree with me that SIF resolved at that stage that it should not take on a biodiversity mandate for Assomption?
Yes.
That was the resolution of the board
Yes.
at that stage.
Yeah.
And then subsequently the stop notice was issued. And then I can tell you, because we have evidence of that I don't want to use the word posse, but a group of members of the National Assembly, the president himself, other members of the government, and Mr. Georges went to Assomption. Are you aware of that?
I did, yes.
You did know?
I did, yes.
And did you know a subsequent meeting took place then at State House, and the Minister of the Environment and also other officials from the environment and from other departments were at that meeting. And my understanding is that there was then an order that the stop notice should be lifted. Would you be surprised if I told you this?
This I don't know.
You don't know anything
No,
about
no,
it.
it's-
Anyway, the stop notice was lifted, but as you know, the breaches continued.
Yes.
And until the next stop notice was issued in November. You visited the island in December of this year.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you observed and how you feel about your observations?
My observation from, if I can use the word concrete jungle, that's what it looks like now. And they've been very cunning, and even the 2% acquisition of the island that they said they were going to utilize, but they've managed to put the operation kind of everywhere that eventually they will encroach just about, okay, we didn't have enough time to have a good, spend a lot of, do a thorough audits. But what saddens me was the sinkholes. That's one which has been capped in.
Would you confirm that the sinkholes have been filled in?
Yes, I got photos of them. I how do you call it? I was a bit also concerned. Halfway through there, between President René's dwelling, where the tower is, and the jetty, there was a tomb there somewhere.
So we identified that was near Villa 22.
Yes.
So on your previous visits to Assomption, apart from the cemetery, the main
Yes.
cemetery near the village,
Yes.
there was another gravesite.
Yes, there was.
And that gravesite was for a child called May.
Man, yeah.
And he had died on Assomption.
Yes.
You know of the incident?
I've been from drowning.
So he
Yeah.
drowned and he was buried there, and there was a
Yeah.
grave there.
Yes.
And at the time when you went in December, could you see that grave?
No, I couldn't. Mind you, it's been a while to pinpoint. I think I had the GPS location for it. I'll have to look it up, but I couldn't find it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I did walk the area where I thought it was.
And did you ask the construction manager about it?
Actually, I think I did, yes.
And could he point it out to you?
No, he doesn't know.
He doesn't know.
Not many people knows, you know.
So, am I safe to infer that that grave has been built over?
There's a possibility.
There's a possibility.
You know, there's a possibility, yeah. It'll be good to maybe, you know, go and check, you know, and because I know very well the staff of SIF when they were doing the how do you call it, invasive species removal on Aldabra birds and other things. Jessica Momo, she knew exactly where it was too. You know.
Jessica works for
for SIF.
SIF.
Yes. Yeah.
So I asked you already that, you know, the SIF board had resolved not to take on biodiversity work on Assomption. Were you surprised when the president announced that the SIF was going to do that in his State of the Nation address in February of 2025?
For me personally, yes, I was.
Okay.
You know, and also being the patron, I thought there was more, because I already had fought for Assumption before. You know, one, you know, my greatest idol on this planet is Professor David Stoddard, because he's the one that stopped the development during the staging post for the British, you know, way back in the 60s. And then secondly, while I was manager on Aldabra, Wilderness Safari wanted to build a lodge on Aldabra, and somewhere, somehow, and, you know, it got canned because somebody high up in the conservation department somewhere in London rang up the president, and the thing was abolished and went to North Island. But at that time, Mr. Lalan, you know, was the chairman of SIF, and he was also all for it. But I also know at that time there was also a plan to build an airstrip on Aldabra.
Would I be correct to say that the current development is a huge threat to Aldabra?
Very much so.
Can you tell us in what way?
This is, I mean, the first thing that baffles me is when you look at this current development, if they were very serious, I think the first thing they would have done was to build a wharf. So all the unloading, loading is in one restricted area, not on the beach. Because mind you, all the access to Aldabra is from that region there, that area. So maybe if there was a control area, like a proper jetty, you know, where biosecurity was done properly. And by the way, I will finish my question in a minute. I've been doing biosecurity for the past 15 years on cruise ship, Arctic and Antarctic. And I would say Noble Caledonia, the company I work for, we were the pioneer, you know, because when they did the rat eradication in South Georgia, and we were pioneer making sure that we don't introduce anything whatsoever. And also, when I was on Aldabra, there was strict protocol through the management plan about rats infestation. You know, all the boats were checked by rangers. All the supply boats had rat bed station, which I personally sometimes went in and checked myself to see if there was no vermin.
Mr. Leone told us yesterday that biosecurity for the construction materials is checked on Mahé at Ile du Port before the barges go, and they are also checked by Pestia on Assomption.
Yes.
Okay. We learned yesterday that Pestia has now withdrawn its services.
But in the same token, Commissioner, you know, the yellow crazy ants, the amount of aggregate and sand we are moving, it takes 1 or 2 ants in those bags. You know, how it's like checking a grain of sand, you know, in a haystack, you know.
Okay, well, while we're talking about sand, were you aware that sand, a considerable amount of sand was removed and shipped to Mahé for the FIFA soccer?
Yes, I did, yes.
Is that a concern?
But isn't it against the law to remove?
Well, they got a permit under the Sand and Gravel Extraction Act.
Oh, so we make it as we go along.
So I'm
you
just
know.
asking you, do you think that the ecosystem
We
of
shouldn't have
Assomption
touched
is
anything.
affected in any way by that extraction?
I mean, that sand dune played a big role on the island. It's there because of it's very special, you know, and we've totally destroyed now, you know, and there's no going back. You know, it's gonna take thousands of years for the wind to push all the grain of sand back there. You know,
Okay.
if we don't run out of parrotfish.
Yeah. You heard Mr. Greg Berg give his evidence this morning. Do you think he addressed all the concerns in the ESIA report?
I don't personally no.
What do you think he omitted? What's
Well-
the biggest criticism you'd have?
I would say, you know, to say that SIF doesn't have the background in biosecurity, that's not true. You know, it's, how do you call it? I think we're above them. You know, where were they? You know, there's still place for every NGOs on Assumption. You know,
So you think you should have been consulted? That
Yes.
SIF should have been consulted
Yes.
for the SIA?
yes.
And SIF wasn't consulted?
I don't think so, no. You know, I
Okay.
could be wrong, but I don't think so.
You weren't consulted?
No, I wasn't.
You weren't consulted about the species, about biodiversity,
No.
about any
No,
concerns?
no.
Okay. How did you feel about the recommendation, or not the recommendation, but the finding that the biodiversity assessment could be done in conjunction with the building work?
This is, again, you know, how do you say? Everything's been rushed. You know, it's, we've, I think the one that's going to lose out there is Aldabra, you know,
Okay.
if we're not careful, you
Thank
know,
you.
because that island is close to my heart, you know, and basically, we Seychelles are people who are its guardian, you know, and I think humanity has a say. We've given it to humanity on behalf of the Republic of Seychelles, and I think it's very important for us to protect what we have there, because this is one amazing place. You know, the whole biodiversity. I mean, Aldabra has gone through so many changes. You know, it's been, you know, prior to 1982, every green turtle were taken. It's come back with a vengeance. You know, the fish, you know, okay, we're suffering coral bleaching, but the fish stock is there, you know. That idea of that spatial plan for the Aldabra group, this must come in force, you know.
I want you to end on some remark going forward, because the stage we are at now.
Yes.
Have you a concluding remark on what should happen now?
This building, we've already, it's already scarred. So to move forward, I think we should restrict the 47 villas they want to build. Stay what, you know, if they are very keen to come and enjoy an island, you know, use what's there. Even a lot of my colleagues disagrees with me. I think an international research, marine research center is built on Assumption, especially now that ICS is saying, yeah, we also want to build a research. Where were they before? You know, everybody is coming on board now. And I feel an international research station, and I can name the person that could spearhead this to bring it forward to all the university of the world to
Can name the person.
to bring students to this amazing place, and who knows, the more the better. ICS has a role there. SIF has a role. All the NGOs has a role, you know. And I would say Dr. Ami Ibrahim would be the one to bring this forward, to even, you know, how do you say, he's a very prominent marine biologist. You know, he's young, he has a passion, you know, about this region. You know, that spatial plan, I would push it up to 50% of
The marine
of
spatial plan.
yes, you know, and these are important island, those Aldabra group of island. I don't say it should be run under SIF, but maybe all the NGOs has a place.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Espao.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you
Thank you.
for helping the Commission.
Thank you
We
so
deeply
much.
appreciate your work.
Thank you, and good luck to you and your
you.
team.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. We're going to finish today's session addressing all our listeners to inform you that unfortunately our witnesses from SIF, namely Dr. Dogley, is unfortunately taken ill, and the replacement that we were going to use is also has been taken ill. We are therefore going to have rescheduled their testimony. However, we do have some in-camera witnesses which we will be taking ourselves personally in another venue. And we hope that we can complete all our work with these in-camera persons so we can resume tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Thank you.